Chapter 368. Lunatic against Lunatic. Maple City was one of the major cities in Star Moon Kingdom's eastern region. Although its population was no match for White River City, it was not too far off. At this moment, over half of Maple City had fallen under Underworld's control, and it was only a matter of time before the organization controlled the city entirely. Young Master Feng, do you really plan to contact Black Flame? South Wolf asked curiously, watching Feng Xianyang as he sat on the sofa enjoying delicacies. Currently, Black Flame had become one of the great experts ranked on the God's Domain experts list and had even received the title of Azura from the Secret Pavilion. He had now become an expert recruiting. However, Black Flame had once rejected their kind offer in the past, going as far as to toy with Feng Xianyang. He had even ruined Underworld's plans. Based on Feng Xianyang's personality, he would continue to plan Black Flame's destruction. Now, however, Feng Xianyang had actually taken the initiative to contact the Black Flame he hated so fiercely. There are some things you will never understand. Based on our previous investigations, that mechanical slayer was a very special monster, Feng Xianyang said as he examined the compiled data in his hands, a playful smile appearing on his handsome face. A special monster? South Wolf was confused. That's right. According to the information I have here, any player killed by the mechanical slayer had to wait one natural day before reviving. Even healers' resurrection skills were ineffective on these players. Moreover, the penalty for death doubled. After these players revived, they also entered a weakened state for 2 natural days. During this period, all their attributes have decreased by 30%, and the EXP they can receive has decreased by 50%. Feng Xianyang reported pleasantly as he lightly shook his head. Do you understand what this means? South Wolf shook his head, growing more confused at Feng Xianyang's words. Have you ever seen a monster with such strength? With God's Domain's basic settings, the stronger a monster is, the greater its loot will be. The mechanical slayer's loot must be stunning. There might even be many epic items among its drops. Meanwhile, Zero Wing is the largest beneficiary from the looting war. They claimed more drops than any other guild in White River City. Obtaining these drops could skyrocket Underworld's future development. However, it is simply too difficult for us to obtain them. Moreover, we don't have any concrete information about the loot. Trying to steal it from Zero Wing would not be easy. Hence, I've decided to invest in Zero Wing. Although we would have to spend a large sum of money, when I become one of Zero Wing's stockholders, I can easily obtain any information I want. Afterward, I can just set up a trap to steal those items and, slowly but surely, destroy Zero Wing from the inside. Isn't it just money? I have plenty of that. Feng Xianyang was determined to join Zero Wing. Nobody could resist the enticement of 1 billion credits. As long as he could get a hold of a small percentage of Zero Wing's shares, he could obtain all information relevant to Zero Wing fair and square. Previously, not only had Shi Feng acted so arrogantly before him, but Shi Feng had also caused his plans to support Dark Star to fall short. So, why would he ever let Shi Feng escape his punishment? South Wolf trembled upon hearing Feng Xianyang's plans. Suddenly, South Wolf realized that he was still naive. His understanding of Feng Xianyang was still too shallow. Feng Xianyang's plans were simply insane and terrifying. In South Wolf's opinion, Feng Xianyang's plans weren't related to the mechanical slayer's loot at all. Feng Xianyang just wanted his revenge on Shi Feng. The drops were an excuse to take action. To think that Feng Xianyang was actually willing to spend 1 billion credits just to destroy Zero Wing and get his revenge. He was a lunatic. Young Master Feng, I'm not trying to overstep my boundaries, but we have gone looking for trouble with Black Flame many times before. We have hunted Zero Wing's core team. Now that we are trying to become the guild's shareholders, won't he just reject us outright? South Wolf said softly. Of course, I have already considered that. Although we were behind the attacks on Zero Wing, Dark Star stood in the forefront. I have never personally made an appearance. Although Black Flame knows the truth, on the surface, we maintain our pretenses with each other. Moreover, the reason I've contacted Black Flame during his time of glory is that I want him to think that I noticed his potential and that I am willing to pay any price to obtain him. That way, I can smoothly become a shareholder of Zero Wing without arousing any suspicion. Feng Xianyang smiled coldly as he gazed into the wineglass in his hand. After taking a sip, he added, Besides, is there anyone who would willingly refuse money? I've investigated Zero Wing's background. This guild does not possess any sort of funding. If Black Flame wishes to develop his guild further, he will inevitably need large sums of credits. To Zero Wing, 1 billion credits is like a heaven-sent fortune. If Black Flame is intelligent, he will set aside personal feelings and act logically. He has no reason not to accept my offer. South Wolf's heart suddenly pounded. He never expected that his guess would hit the mark. Feng Xuanyang's true goal had never been to obtain the drops of the mechanical slayer. Instead, he only ever cared about Zero Wing's destruction. To put it another way, Feng Xuanyang planned to incidentally obtain the drops after he destroyed Zero Wing. As fear began to grip South Wolf's heart, Feng Xuanyang contacted Feng. "Oh, Vice Leader Feng, to what do I owe the pleasure of your call today?" Feng asked rhetorically the moment the call connected. "Guild Leader Black Flame, regarding the matters we discussed during our last meeting, I have thought them through. Regarding a guild with boundless prospects like Zero Wing, Underworld is willing to pay 1 billion credits to become one of its shareholders. At that time, with the support of Underworld, Zero Wing will certainly grow to become the overlord of Star Moon Kingdom's eastern region. Guild Leader Black Flame, when will you have time to sign the contract with us?" Feng Xuanyang asked, smiling. "It looks like you have finally realized Zero Wing's value. Although your previous conduct was slightly excessive, I will be magnanimous and forgive you this time. Let's first talk about the shares, then. If there are no problems after our discussion, we can discuss a time to sign the contract. After all, the shares of the utmost importance to Zero Wing," Feng said, expressing his interest. However, the moment Feng Xuanyang heard Feng's words, he very nearly erupted into a flurry of curses. The wine glass Feng Xuanyang had held, however, was less fortunate as it fell from his trembling hand and shattered on the floor. Feng spoke as if he thought Feng Xuanyang was a child who had done something wrong, and that Feng Xuanyang was currently pleading for Feng's forgiveness. Why wouldn't such blatant humiliation enrage the proud and arrogant Feng Xuanyang? "Black Flame, I will endure today's matters. The moment I become a shareholder of Zero Wing, I will sign your death certificate." Feng Xuanyang inwardly swore as he suppressed his anger. As calmly as possible he said, "Of course, Underworld will willingly purchase 10% of Zero Wing shares for 1 billion credits. We will also supply Zero Wing with 100 gold coins every week, as well as send a large number of experts and talents from various fields, allowing the guild to become the overlord of White River City." 1 billion for 10% of the shares? Feng shook his head. Revealing a cold smile, he said, "I think we may have a misunderstanding. Vice Leader Feng, do you know what times have changed means? Is Guild Leader Black Flame planning to reject my well-intentioned investment because of our previous issues?" Feng Xuanyang hurriedly said. "It was truly just a misunderstanding. I had no knowledge of the actions against Zero Wing. Lone Tyrant was responsible for those attacks. Despite my explicit command barring him from taking action against Zero Wing, Lone Tyrant insisted on doing so. Underworld never intended to strike Zero Wing." "Vice Leader Feng, you misunderstand me. I'm not saying that I don't agree to Underworld's investment. However, 1 billion for 10% of Zero Wing shares? Vice Leader Feng, don't you think you're being a little too greedy?" Feng shook his head slightly. He said seriously, "Vice Leader Feng, greed can ruin one's life. However, seeing Vice Leader Feng's sincerity, I will sell you 0.1% of Zero Wing shares in exchange for 1 billion credits. What do you think?" At this moment, Feng's tone implied that this was an incredibly generous offer. There was no sense of disharmony in Feng's words, and it sounded as if his every word was true. "Black Flame." Feng Xuanyang's face immediately flushed red upon hearing Feng's remarks, the hair all over his body standing on end and the blood vessels on his forehead surfacing. Feng Xuanyang was no longer capable of suppressing the rage within him. Word by word, he angrily bellowed, "Have you gone insane? Why don't you rob a bank instead?" Feng's offer even frightened South Wolf. A 100-fold increase. Even if Zero Wing had grown. Chapter 369. King's Return. By demanding such a price, Feng made it clear that he was still angry about Feng Xuanyang's previous actions. Misunderstanding, was just another form of deceit. Everybody knew this. After all, if anything could be chalked up to a misunderstanding, why would anyone need the police? Vice Leader Feng, I'm really losing a lot with this transaction. If you aren't interested, there are many others who will jump at the offer. Feng chuckled. In fact, Feng wasn't lying. Many guilds and organizations outside of Star Moon Kingdom had expressed interest in collaborating with Zero Wing. In addition, there were also major corporations who had offered high prices to purchase the guild. At this moment, Feng Xuanyang's complexion darkened, and his eyes flashed with a fierce chill. Even South Wolf, who stood by Feng Xuanyang's side, silently lowered his head, his legs trembling. He was deeply afraid that Feng Xuanyang would erupt with rage and take it out on him. Whenever Feng Xuanyang was this angry, he would secure a painful ending for any who incurred his wrath. Meanwhile, Feng had toyed with Feng Xuanyang many times now. No one knew what Feng Xuanyang would do next. After a long moment. Guild Leader Black Flame, I am very sincere here. How about this? In exchange for 1 billion credits, I will ask for 5% of Zero Wing's shares. Feng Xuanyang suppressed his anger and expressed an extraordinary serenity. No negotiations. I will only do 0.1%. This is the very limit that I can offer. If Vice Leader Feng is not interested, then forget it. I won't demand your acceptance. Feng had only probed since he doubted Feng Xuanyang's intentions. He had not expected that Feng Xuanyang could actually endure his games so well. Feng Xuanyang had always possessed a dominant approach. He would immediately take action against anyone who disagreed with him. Now, however, he actually controlled his anger to negotiate with Feng. Why wouldn't Feng be suspicious? There must be a reason for Feng Xuanyang's attitude change. Feng Xuanyang gnashed his teeth to the point of almost cracking them when he heard Feng's reply. 1 billion was not a small number. If he had to give away so much money, even his heart would ache. If it was in exchange for 10% of Zero Wing's shares, he could barely accept it. However, he could never accept 0.1%. Black Flame. You dare treat me like a fool. Sooner or later, I will make you pay this debt 100-fold. Feng Xuanyang inwardly bellowed. As long as he became one of Zero Wing's shareholders, he could investigate Zero Wing fair and square and insert his own men into Zero Wing's core. When that time came, he could crush everyone in Zero Wing. Hence, suppressing his anger right now, he said in a low tone, I understand. I hope that Guild Leader Black Flame will not disappoint me. Let's sign the contract as soon as possible, then. Feng Xuanyang's agreement surprised and concerned Feng. Originally, he thought he could anger Feng Xuanyang and send the young master flying into a rage. He had expected Feng Xuanyang to break off their relationship completely, spouting a few curses and making some vengeful statements such as, not resting until one of them was annihilated, and the like. However, Feng had never expected this ending. Feng Xuanyang had actually endured such an insult to his reputation. Feng Xuanyang was actually willing to exchange 1 billion credits for 0.1% of Zero Wing's shares. Unless Feng Xuanyang had truly lost his mind, he was definitely plotting something. Considering the events up to this point, Feng revealed a faint smile and said, Vice Leader Feng, why are you in such a hurry? I still haven't finished. Aside from the 1 billion credits, I also want 50% of Underworld shares. If you can promise that, I won't hesitate to sign. Black Flame. You're courting death. Feng Xuanyang exploded. He was now fully aware that Feng was not deliberately raising the price out of anger. Instead, Feng was wholeheartedly toying with him right now. Not only did Feng want to sell 0.1% of Zero Wing shares for 1 billion credits, but he also wanted 50% of Underworld shares. What was Underworld? It was a force that far surpassed a first-rate guild. Not to mention 50%, Feng Xuanyang did not even possess 1% of the organization's shares. Yet, Feng wanted 50%. Vice Leader Feng, you're not going to keep up the act anymore? Feng faintly smiled. I wanted to play around with you for a little longer. Black Flame, don't think that just because you are invincible in White River City that I can't do anything to you. You underestimate Underworld too much. Zero Wing is merely the overlord of White River City. Meanwhile, the several cities surrounding White River City have already fallen under our control. It won't be long before I personally finish you off and eradicate your guild." Feng Xianyang could no longer control his anger. Like a berserk beast, he let out a lung-piercing roar, causing everyone who heard it to shiver with fear. "Black Flame, originally, you could have had 1 billion credits as your retirement fund. Now, you no longer have that chance. I will force you into a corner, bit by bit, and make you regret all your actions today." At first, Shi Feng was slightly surprised when he heard Feng Xuanyang's fury. In the next moment, however, he smiled and said, "I will be waiting." Afterward, Shi Feng disconnected the call. Although he had only said 4 words, his statement contained utter confidence and determination. Even Feng Xianyang was slightly stunned, having no comeback. Feng Xianyang fully understood the meaning behind Shi Feng's words. Zero Wing is not afraid to start a war. If you think you're strong enough, bring it on. However, Feng Xianyang was confused. Just how had Shi Feng remained so calm even when facing 1 billion credits? "It seems that I need to speed up my plans," Shi Feng thought after he disconnected the call. His surprise during the call had not been due to fear. Instead, it was because he had not expected Underworld's background to be so powerful. They had acted so quickly and had already conquered the cities surrounding White River City. If it were not for Feng Xianyang losing his cool for a moment and revealing this information, Shi Feng would not have known how serious the situation was. However, Shi Feng could now release a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had not discovered this too late. He could still prepare if he started taking action right now. It wasn't Underworld's iron grip on those several cities. Rather, they were under the absolute control of the guilds beneath Underworld. Otherwise, Feng Xianyang would not have tried to spend 1 billion credits to bury Zero Wing. Currently, the average player's level was still low, so interaction between cities was limited. However, when players reached higher levels, they would have to head to higher-leveled areas. Meanwhile, these high-level areas were close to the common borders between cities. At that time, Underworld could trap Zero Wing. With enemies on all sides, Zero Wing's members would not be able to level up safely as they would face the risk of an enemy ambush at any time. In the end, Zero Wing would slowly but surely be pushed into a corner. However, thanks to Feng Xuanyang's temper tantrum, Shi Feng could act early to prevent such a situation. Otherwise, by the time everyone had leveled up, Zero Wing would be declawed. Considering the situation, Shi Feng hurried back to White River City. Upon his return, Shi Feng discovered that the area outside the teleportation hall had already been fully repaired. Meanwhile, many players wandered the streets. A majority of these players were independent. Whenever these independent players saw someone wearing Zero Wing's emblem, they would watch that person enviously, letting the Zero Wing member feel very proud. As for the members of Dark Star and other guilds, whenever they saw a member of Zero Wing, they would consciously avoid contact. These guild players were no longer as arrogant as before. Moreover, Shi Feng discovered that the independent players walking around on the streets possessed very high levels. These independent players were clearly above the standard of ordinary players. Currently, many of these independent players were trying to form parties to raid high-level dungeons or grind in high-level areas. Before Shi Feng had even left the teleportation hall, the atmosphere on the street changed. Practically everyone turned to stare at him. Isn't he one-hit Azura, Black Flame? Guild leader Black Flame has returned. Where? Wah! It's real. It's the real deal. He's just too handsome. Crap. I'm going to faint at this rate. Shi Feng was not currently wearing his black cloak, so he was easily and quickly recognized. Suddenly, everyone on the street grew excited. Some female players looked as if they would pounce on Shi Feng as soon as he passed, and many of them squealed in excitement. However, before these female players even had the chance to pounce on Shi Feng, a group of players wearing dazzling equipment quickly swarmed over from a distance. The poorest quality weapons and equipment these players had were secret silver rank, and every one of these players was above level 20. They all wore a 6-winged emblem on their chests, and the appearance of this group immediately attracted everyone's attention. This group of players was none other than Zero Wing's core team. In addition to these core members, there were also over 1,000 elite members behind them. These players moved in unison, and the extraordinary momentum they displayed caused the players to make way for them unconsciously. Meanwhile, all of these members of Zero Wing were here to receive Xueqi. Guild leader, welcome back. Aqua Rose, Fire Dance, and everyone else walked over, smiling faintly as they looked at Xueqi. This grand welcome left Xueqi utterly speechless. He could only silently nod in reply. Afterward, Xueqi walked back to the Star Streak trading firm with the crowd from Zero Wing. Throughout their journey, the players of White River City had all promptly moved aside. These players gazed at Xueqi with wonder as if welcoming the king's return. Chapter 370. Legacy Stone Sword. Star Streak Trading Firm. Third floor meeting room. At this moment, all of the core members of Zero Wing had gathered here. Compared to other guilds, Zero Wing was more fortunate as it had a meeting place exclusively for its own members. Normally, other guilds would have to use the temporary rooms available at the Adventurers Association. However, those temporary rooms could only hold a limited number of people at a time. Other than the Adventurers Association, guilds could also pay a large sum to rent conference rooms at hotels or bars. However, only wealthy and powerful guilds could afford such rentals. Guild leader, we have completed all of the necessary preparations for tomorrow's recruitment. We can start as soon as the guild residence's construction has completed. In addition, here is the detailed list of tomorrow's tasks. Everyone can take a look at what they need to do tomorrow. Aqua Rose presented a list of tasks on the meeting table system screen and explained them one by one. Aqua Rose had long since prepared for Zero Wing's recruitment. However, when she considered the large number of players coming from other cities as well, she had to revise her plan. Moreover, she had also made detailed adjustments to the guild's benefit system. Now, they would not have to fear the sudden influx of members overloading Zero Wing's capacity and harming the guild's development. Aqua Rose's list shocked everyone present. The information Aqua Rose had compiled so impressively organized. They felt as if they were reading a university textbook. The section relating to Zero Wing's benefit system consisted of over a dozen pages. Moreover, Aqua Rose had carefully planned how they were going to counter the spies sent by other guilds. To access more information about the guild and its benefit system, members would need to be promoted to a higher rank within the guild. However, the lowest-ranking members could still view the benefits that Zero Wing offered, and they were enough to impress many players. What? There are actually 150 private rooms available for rent in the guild residence? I thought there were only going to be 7 or 8 rooms available. That's only what is available for the normal members. Look at the benefits for elite members. They can actually rent 2-star private rooms. Moreover, there are a total of 52-star private rooms available. Just how huge is our guild residence? Many of the core members present were shocked by the information revealed. Their curiosity about their guild residence grew. Look at their surprise. If they knew that our guild residence is White River City's largest and most valuable residence, the Purple Sun Mansion, I wonder what kind of expressions they would make? Blackie chuckled softly. Although Zero Wing's core membership had grown past 100, only a few actually knew where their guild residence was located. After everyone had their assigned tasks, Aqua Rose suddenly stood. Clearing her throat, she said seriously, "The next thing we are going to talk about is classified information regarding Zero Wing. It is also what that everyone present is most concerned about today. The loot from the Mechanical Slayer. Other than the people here, no one is allowed access to this information." Everyone nodded nervously in reply to Aqua Rose's words. Every player who had been invited to this meeting today had a huge responsibility to the guild. The Mechanical Slayer was extraordinarily powerful. So, the items it dropped were also extraordinary. The importance of the role these items could play went without saying. Whether it was competing for a dungeon's first clear or fighting in a guild war, these items would definitely be of immense help a guild's development. If the information of these items went public, not only would their enemies have an edge against them, but it would also rouse the greed in others. At that time, their enemies would definitely plot to steal these items. Looking at the anticipation in everyone's eyes, Xueqi slowly reported, "We have obtained a total of 102 items. Of them, there are 37 fine gold items, 14 dark gold items, 7 forging designs and recipes, 12 Tier 2 magic scrolls, 3 Tier 3 magic scrolls, 8 potions, 2 epic items, and 19 rare materials." What? There are actually epic items. Awesome! With epic items, Our guild will flourish in dungeons. We can claim all of the first clears easily. Everyone grew incomparably excited after listening to Xueqi's report. The large number of fine gold and dark gold items alone had greatly shocked the team. They could fully arm a 20-man team with so many items. Just the thought of having a 20-man team fully geared in fine gold and dark gold ranked weapons and equipment was enough to give them the shivers. Not even first-rate guilds could produce such a powerful team. Fully arming a team with secret silver equipment was already impressive. As for a 20-man team in fine gold equipment, that was simply impossible. Meanwhile, if Zero Wing could establish such a powerful team, they would be invincible in 20-man team dungeons. The dungeon bosses would become pushovers. At that time, they could continuously supply the guild with loads of precious equipment. Most importantly, there were even 2 epic items among the loot. Previously, epic items only existed in their thoughts and dreams. After all, since the launch of God's domain, there had yet to be any mention of anyone obtaining an epic item. Now, their guild actually had 2 epic items. Everyone's breath began to grow heavy at this revelation. Don't get too excited. Although we obtained quite a few weapons and equipment, the lowest level requirement is 30. The same goes for the 2 epic items. Xueqi smiled in response to their enthusiasm. He could understand how his team felt at the moment. Epic items. In God's domain, they were symbols of extraordinary strength. In Xueqi's previous life, he too had been elated when he first saw an epic item. After all, it was an item every player dreamed of having. I know that all of you are eager to see how powerful the epic items are, so today, I'll let all of you have a look at them. While we're at it, I'll let all of you know that I do not plan to allocate these 2 epic items to anyone in particular. Instead, I'll place both of them in the guild warehouse. However, only core members can see them. Once you have accumulated sufficient contribution points, you can trade your points for any of these 2 epic items at any time, Xueqi explained. He then presented the information of the 2 items on the screen of the meeting table. Song of Beatrice, Staff, Epic Rank. Level 30. Level 90. Equipment requirement. Intelligence 200. Attributes will be adjusted according to user's level. Magic damage increased by 25%. Cooldown of all spells reduced by 20%. Casting speed increased by 20%. Spell critical rate increased by 15%. Cast range +3. All magic type skills +2 levels. Ignore levels +15. Durability 200/200. Additional passive skill. Song of Elements. All successful attacks have a chance to trigger this skill, increasing players' magic damage by 20% for 15 seconds. Does not stack. Cooldown. 1 minute. Additional skill 1. Forest Sprites. Summons 3 forest sprites to battle for you. Forest sprites can also be sacrificed to recover players' mana. Each forest sprite sacrificed will recover 15% of players' maximum mana. Cooldown. 20 seconds. Additional skill 2. Elemental Domain. All allies within a radius of 50 yards will have their magic damage increased by 15%, cast speed increased by 15%, and mana consumption decreased by 20% for 1 minute. Cooldown. 30 minutes. Additional skill 3. Song of Sprites. Increases the effect of a specified spell by 300%. Cooldown. 5 minutes. Shadowcraft. Leather Armor, Epic Rank. Level 30. Level 90. Equipment requirement. Agility 200, Strength 150. Attributes will be adjusted according to user's level. Agility increased by 25%. Strength increased by 10%. Evasion +20. All magic resistance +20. Defend +4 levels. Ignore levels +10. Additional passive skill 1. Dark Shadow. Movement speed increased by 20%. In dark places, movement speed increased by 30% and agility increased by 10%. Additional passive skill 2. Rapid Movement. Agility increased after receiving damage. Agility increases by 5% with every 10% decrease in HP. Additional skill. Shadowless. Player can consecutively appear behind targets within a distance of 40 yards. Each use consumes 1 charge. Replenishes 1 charge per minute up to a maximum of 3 charges. Of the 2 epic items, the Song of Beatrice required 600,000 guild points, whereas Shadowcraft required 400,000 guild points. 1 guild point was the current equivalent to around 30 copper coins. Even Aqua Rose and Fire Dance would require a relatively long time before they could accumulate so many points. When everyone saw the attributes on the 2 epic items, they were all stupefied. The equipment they wore was simply too inferior compared to these 2 items. Meanwhile, when everyone thought about how they could trade guild points for these items, a passionate flame lit up in all of their eyes. The absurdly high demand of guild points didn't deter their passion at all. At this moment, they wanted to rush out of the room and start earning guild points immediately. You've seen the attributes on these items for yourselves. As to whether or not you can trade for them, that will depend on the effort you put in. In addition, I also have some good news to tell all of you. I will reward guild points to the first 100 members in the guild to get promoted into a Tier 1 class. First place will receive a reward of 50,000 points. So all of you, work hard. Seeing the high morale of the crowd, Xueqi added more fuel to the fire. Currently, not a single player had become a Tier 1 class in the entire Star Moon Kingdom. The various guilds around the kingdom were all focused on raiding the 50-man team dungeons in their respective cities. None of them knew the importance of Tier 1 players. Presently, only Xueqi knew that Tier 1 players were the key requirement to raid a level 20, 100-man team dungeon. In addition, Tier 1 players also played an important role in the competition between guilds. The sooner a guild possessed Tier 1 players, the more beneficial it would be to the guild's future development. This was the reason why Xueqi had ordered his guild members to level up quickly rather than waste time competing over the first clear for the level 10, 50-man team dungeons. Everyone's fighting spirit soared once more when they heard Xueqi's announcement. At this moment, they all viewed their decision to join Zero Wing as the best decision they had ever made. No other guild would offer fine gold and dark gold items to its members, much less epic items. On the other hand, not only had Xueqi made the items available for trade, but he also spent a large sum of money to encourage everyone to raise their strengths. Players would never find these opportunities in any other guild. If they could earn the reward of 50,000 guild points, even if they didn't want the epic items, they could still gain several fine gold or dark gold items, greatly increasing their prowess. After the meeting ended, the core members headed towards the class association to receive their class change quest, afraid that the others would beat them to the top prize. It should be about time for me to upgrade my class as well. Xueqi smiled faintly. Xueqi had wanted to take on his class change quest for a while now. However, he celebrated the fact that he had not already done so. He would have regretted that decision. Before the meeting started, Xueqi had already appraised the drops from the Mechanical Slayer. In the looting war, Zero Wing had actually managed to obtain 103 items, not 102. There was one item Xueqi had not revealed. The item Xueqi hid was none other than the crystal-encased ancient sword. Xueqi had kept it hidden because that item was simply too frightening. Even if he added together the value of the other 102 items, it would not reach even 1/100th of the sword in the stone. If others learned about this item, it would definitely cause a sensation to sweep throughout God's domain, which was why Xueqi had decided to keep silent about it. The sword in the stone was neither a weapon nor armor. It was a legacy item. Moreover, the legacy it contained was no ordinary legacy. It was a legacy item even more powerful than the magic weapon Star's Reminiscence. Chapter 371. Peak Legacy. A legacy hinted at a hidden class. This was also one of the reasons why legacy items were extremely rare in God's domain. Previously, the fact that they had obtained the Astromancer's legacy from the Bloodhand Association's stronghold had already blown Xueqi's mind. Now, however, he had an even more powerful legacy. Moreover, only berserkers and swordsmen could use this legacy. Xueqi knew that the legacy contained within the sword in the stone was more powerful than the Astromancer's legacy was because of its unsealing conditions. Violet Cloud's legacy item, the magic weapon Star's Reminiscence, required a Tier 3 Great Mage to help unseal it. Based on these stringent requirements, the Astromancer's legacy should be superior among the many legacies that existed in God's domain. However, Xueqi's sword in the stone was far more amazing than the Star's Reminiscence. Sword in the Stone. The sword inside the crystal faintly emits a power from the ancient era. It occurs naturally with no signs of being crafted. However, a frightening power had damaged this ancient sword severely in the past. If one wishes to awaken the power contained within and gain a better understanding of this sword, they need to gather the power of 3 Tier 4 classes and expend 21 mana stones. Class restriction: Berserker and Swordsman. Not to mention the 3 Tier 4 NPCs, just the number of mana stones required was a huge headache for Xueqi. Mana stones were extremely precious in God's domain. Although they weren't as valuable as 7 Luminaries crystals, they were not far from them, either. Mana stones were rare materials required to craft epic ranked weapons and equipment. However, the most dreadful aspect of mana stones was that nobody sold them in God's domain. Only bosses in 100-man hard mode team dungeons dropped mana stones. Moreover, the drop rate was a minuscule 2%. Currently, throughout all of God's domain, Xueqi had yet even to hear news about anyone obtaining the first clear of a level 10, 50-man team dungeon, not to mention a level 20 100-man team dungeon. Even Zero Wing, his own guild, was only in the preparation stage of raiding a level 20, 100-man team dungeon. Only players who had gathered 100 Tier 1 players had a chance of success in the hard mode versions of those dungeons. In other words, it was simply impossible for Xueqi to get his hands on a mana stone right now, let alone 21 of them. The difficulty of unsealing the sword in the stone far surpassed the magic weapon star's reminiscence. Hence, Xueqi was certain that the legacy contained within the sword in the stone was far superior to the star's reminiscence. At the very least, it should be one of the peak legacies of God's domain. I can only give it a try. Xueqi smiled bitterly as he gazed at the sword in the stone inside his bag. The awakening conditions of the sword in the stone were too high. Ever since Xueqi had appraised the legacy item, he had constantly been thinking of a way to fulfill those conditions. He could not afford to wait until Zero Wing obtained the first clear of a 100-man hard mode team dungeon before gradually collecting 21 mana stones. If the guild leader of any other guild stood in Xueqi's place right now, activating the class change quest of the sword in the stone would be nigh impossible. And ordinary players could never meet these conditions. Only after racking his brain did Xueqi think a way to awaken the sword in the stone early. Soon, Xueqi left the meeting room as well and headed to one of the forging rooms on the 4th floor of the Starstreak trading firm. They had obtained a total of 7 forging designs and recipes from the looting war. Of them, 3 were forging designs. All 3 forging designs produced different types of basic strengthened armor kits, which were respectively meant for plate armor, leather armor, and cloth armor. Although these basic strengthened armor kits were a lot weaker than the basic mana armor kit, their effects only half of the latter, they were still very valuable. After all, Xueqi was not a dedicated lifestyle player. He could not afford to spend a large amount of time producing the basic mana armor kits. Meanwhile, the supply of basic mana armor kits available on the market would not meet the demand. Hence, these 3 basic strengthened armor kit forging designs were extremely important. At this moment, a knocking came from the door of the forging room. "Guild leader, the ones you called for are here," Melancholic Smile said respectfully as she entered the room. While Xueqi had been busy, Melancholic Smile had grown to have the aura of a strong and capable woman. The current Melancholic Smile was already an advanced forging apprentice, and she was only a short distance from her promotion to a basic forger. Under Melancholic Smile's management, the Horizon Alliance, the lifestyle guild Xueqi had secretly established, had grown to house over 3,000 members. These lifestyle players had been recruited from various places. Currently, these members had crafted a majority of the products sold at the Starstreak trading firm. Not even Aqua Rose and Blackie knew about the Horizon Alliance. In the eyes of the public, the members of the Horizon Alliance were simply players that the Starstreak trading firm had hired. "Ah, come on in then," Xueqi nodded. Following which, a man and a woman entered the forging room. The woman who followed Melancholic Smile was none other than the forging genius Cream Coco. She had already become an advanced forging apprentice. Meanwhile, the man who entered with Cream Coco was a 40-year-old man called Roasted Iron Heart. Because of his age, the guild's Roasted Iron Heart had joined in the past had looked down on him. However, after he passed the test set by Melancholic Smile and became a member of Horizon Alliance, he had poured his heart into forging items and displayed frightening talent. Regarding forging techniques, he was even more talented than Melancholic Smile. Currently, he had already become one of the 5 great forgers of the Horizon Alliance. After the two entered, upon seeing Xueqi, Roasted Ironheart immediately grew cautious. Normally, Melancholic Smile was responsible for dealing with all matters within the Horizon Alliance. So, no one had ever met the true owner of the guild. The members of the Horizon Alliance only knew that their guild leader was extremely mysterious, and he had actually managed to form a relationship with the Starstreak trading firm. Not only did this great personage possess frightening wealth, but he also had great talents such as Melancholic Smile and Cream Cocoa working under him. The members of the Horizon Alliance all felt reverence and curiosity towards this mysterious boss of theirs. Today, as Roasted Ironheart finally met the mysterious boss behind the Horizon Alliance, his heart was filled with incomparable shock. Originally, Roasted Ironheart had believed that the force behind the Horizon Alliance was a wealthy tycoon. However, he would never have imagined that proprietor of this lifestyle guild was actually White River City's. No, the entire Star Moon Kingdom's #1 expert, the one-hit Azura, Black Flame. How could this revelation not shock him? Moreover, Black Flame was also Star Moon Kingdom's publicly acknowledged #1 forger. At this moment, Roasted Ironheart's mind was a complete mess. There is no need to panic. I don't eat people. Xueqi could not help but console Roasted Ironheart when he noticed the man's trembling legs. Hearing Xueqi's words, Roasted Ironheart nearly slumped to the ground. The #1 expert of Star Moon Kingdom. The guild leader of Zero Wing. The great character that dominated White River City. There was simply no chance that a small fry like Roasted Ironheart could meet such a great character like Xueqi. Yet, not only had such a situation occurred, but Roasted Ironheart was also speaking directly with such a great character. How could Roasted Ironheart not panic? Uncle Ironheart, relax. Our guild leader is a very kind and friendly guy. Cream Cocoa said, smiling. Roasted Ironheart silently nodded. After taking a long moment to calm down, he said, hello, boss. Melancholic Smile and Cream Cocoa giggled at this sight. Xueqi had grown speechless at Roasted Ironheart's actions as well. He was not a monster. Why was he so intimidated? All right, I have some important matters to discuss with you. I've called the three of you here today because of these. Saying so, Xueqi took out the 3 basic strengthened armor kit forging designs. Each of you will take one. Your task for this is to produce these items. The more, the better. As forgers, Melancholic Smile's group was stunned when they saw the forging designs. They understood the value of the basic strengthened armor kits. By producing these items, not only could they increase their promotion speed to basic forgers, but they could also use these items to dominate the forging market and create names for themselves. When the trio thought about how Xueqi was actually willing to let them learn such precious forging designs, their hearts were moved. I'll leave these forging designs to you, so research them properly. If you can achieve a 20% success rate, then you can start mass-producing them, Xueqi said. Although the basic strengthened armor kits were not as difficult to produce as the basic mana armor kits, advanced forging apprentices still had a low success rate. Melancholic Smile and the others would be lucky if they could successfully produce 1 or 2 pieces out of 10 tries. Guild leader, rest assured. We will accomplish this task. We definitely won't disappoint you. All 3 of them guaranteed. Following which, the 3 returned to their respective forging rooms and began their research on the forging designs. Meanwhile, Xueqi also departed from the Starstreak trading firm and hurried towards White River City's bank. He planned to start the first step of awakening the sword in the stone. Chapter 372. 5 Big Cities. Walking in the middle of the street in White River City, Xueqi had used the demon mask to change his appearance back to Yifeng. The color of his ID reverted to white as well. All this while, Xueqi had used his artificial ID of Black Flame. It had been a long time since he used his actual ID. In a rapidly changing game like God's Domain, not only were there tons of new players flooding into the game every day, but there were also many experts rising and falling with every passing moment. Meanwhile, the duration of Yifeng's disappearance from the public eye had been long enough for everyone in White River City completely forget about him. Throughout Xueqi's whole journey to the bank, not a single player he passed by had recognized him. Although some players had glanced his way, they had not done so because of Xueqi's identity. Instead, it was because of the equipment he wore. The magic weapon Abyssal Blade and the dark gold-ranked Purgatory's shadow hung from his waist. Even if Xueqi had removed the 2 weapons' glow effect, When one saw the intricate patterns carved onto the swords as well as the flowing lights flashing on the blades, no one believed they were ordinary weapons. White River City sure has changed. Even the average level of ordinary players is almost the same as Star Moon City. Making a casual observation, Xueqi discovered that a majority of the independent players wandering the streets were level 15 or 16 and armed with a few pieces of bronze equipment. Xueqi occasionally saw some independent players who were level 17 or 18 and fully geared in bronze equipment with a few pieces of mysterious iron equipment. In the past, this sight could not have been found in White River City. Suddenly, Xueqi thought of an idea. What if he transformed White River City into the heart of Star Moon Kingdom? Originally, Xueqi had intended to develop a branch guild in Star Moon City once Zero Wing was sufficiently powerful to compete for the resources available there. After all, Star Moon City was the heart of Star Moon Kingdom. It was a gem that incited fierce competition among the many first-rate guilds. Star Moon City was also the hub for elites. The player population there was simply immense, with no other city within Star Moon Kingdom capable of being its rival. Meanwhile, controlling Star Moon City meant obtaining the large number of elite players and resources there. A guild's development in Star Moon City would be much faster than in any other city in Star Moon Kingdom. However, when Xueqi saw the current state of White River City, a thought suddenly came to his mind. Why must he torture himself to compete over Star Moon City with all those first-rate guilds? Most players went to Star Moon City was because it had far more opportunities for development. The city also contained many advantages that no other city possessed. But, what about now? Due to Zero Wing's existence in White River City and the fact that the guild did not recruit members in any other city, many players had now migrated to White River City. As for the reason behind this migration, wasn't it because Zero Wing offered advantages that no other guild possessed? As long as Zero Wing offered its members more benefits than other guilds, players would continue to flood into White River City. Moreover, as players' levels increased, their income would increase as well. Soon, the teleportation fee between cities would no longer be a problem. At that time, it was not entirely impossible for White River City to surpass even Star Moon City. Is it about Underworld's inside information? Xueqi suddenly heard the arrival of a message. Absolute Heaven had contacted him. Meanwhile, the assassin's message was perfectly timed. Underworld had already become the dominant force in the several cities surrounding White River City. As for how much control they possessed over those cities and exactly which cities they controlled, Xueqi had no clue. Without that information, he could not take appropriate measures against Underworld. Xueqi did not want to waste too much time searching for Underworld and subsequently ruining the organization's plans. If he could find access to detailed information about Underworld, he would have a much easier time preparing for the future. There sure is a lot of information here. Xueqi was inwardly surprised when he opened up the file attached to Absolute Heaven's message. The file was dozens of pages long, and its level of detail was above and beyond what Xueqi had expected. An outer member like Absolute Heaven should not have had access to the kind of information contained in the file. Most likely, only those at Feng Xuanyang's level would possess the authority to know such information. Did Absolute Heaven kidnap and interrogate Feng Xuanyang? I'm impressed that he could obtain such detailed information. Now that he had such detailed information about Underworld, without wasting any time, Xueqi quickly found a quiet spot inside the bank and sat down. He then started carefully reading through the file Absolute Heaven had sent him. 2 hours later, Xueqi finished reading the final page. He could not help but exhale deeply. Although I already expected as much, I did not realize that Underworld is actually so terrifying. They control a total of 316 guilds in Star Moon Kingdom's eastern region. It is no wonder even Gentle Snow is wary of Underworld. Making a rough estimate, Xueqi guessed that Underworld controlled over 1 million players in Star Moon Kingdom's eastern region alone. Zero Wing's current member count was just over 5,000. To Underworld, Zero Wing was no more intimidating than an ant. Furthermore, there were also the Underworld Guards, a group of elites that the organization secretly nurtured. Although the Underworld Guards only had around 400 members, each one was an expert. If they formed a 100-man team, they could effortlessly annihilate hundreds of elite players out in the fields. In addition, Blue Frost City, Maple City, Gale City, Twin Lion City, and Cold Star City, the 5 big cities neighboring White River City, had all been dominated by the guilds under Underworld's control. Moreover, these guilds were not inferior to Underworld in the slightest. Without any powerful enemies, these guilds had grown rapidly. Of these guilds, Overwhelming Smile, the guild holding dominance over Gale City, was currently even more powerful than Dark Star had been during its peak. Without any obstructions, it was a matter of time before these powerful guilds became the overlords of their respective cities. Underworld really is a headache. This situation is much worse than what I had imagined. Xueqi wrinkled his brows and scratched his head, considering the situation carefully. Based on Zero Wing's current strength, moving out and dealing with just one of the 5 cities under Underworld's control would be a massive undertaking. As for dealing with all 5, it was simply impossible. Setting aside the disadvantages of fighting in enemy territory, Zero Wing would first need sufficient strength. With the current number of members Zero Wing possessed, it wouldn't even be a threat for any of these guilds. For such an endeavor, not only would Zero Wing need to pay a large number of teleportation fees, but it also had to waste a lot of manpower and material resources. As for Xueqi himself, although he was strong as an individual, he wasn't strong enough to threaten an entire guild with tens of thousands of members. I need to hurry and get my class change done. Xueqi looked at the sword and the stone inside his bag, a sense of urgency overwhelming his thoughts of upgrading his class. No matter how Xueqi racked his mind, he could not think up of a proper solution. The only thing he could do now was to increase his own strength. There was a large gap in combat power between a Tier 1 player and a Tier 0 player, not to mention a hidden class. If Xueqi could successfully upgrade his class and become a Tier 1 player, he could cause some trouble for the guilds controlled by Underworld and buy Zero Wing more time to grow. Following which, Xueqi walked towards the bank's counter, retrieving the larger of the 2 Philosopher's Stones from inside his personal warehouse. He then retrieved a large number of magic crystals from the guild warehouse. Guild members had come across these magic crystals while they had raided dungeons. Originally, these magic crystals were intended for equipment crafting, but as of yet, nobody within the guild could produce equipment that required magic crystals. Hence, a large stockpile had accumulated inside the guild warehouse. Now, however, Xueqi emptied their stock. Following which, Xueqi returned to his forging room inside the Star Streak trading firm. He then took out the Philosopher's Stone and all of the magic crystals. Mana stones were originally born from the minerals inside magic crystals. If magic crystals were refined, there was a chance to obtain a mana stone. Hence, Xueqi intended to utilize the Philosopher's Stone to refine mana crystals into mana stones. However, mana stones were extremely rare and precious. The chances of obtaining a mana stone from refining a magic crystal were extremely low, and even Xueqi himself wasn't very confident in success. Hopefully this works. Xueqi then grabbed a transparent magic crystal with one hand and the Philosopher's Stone in the other. Praying silently, he refined the magic crystal. Chapter 373. Alchemical Synthesis. With his right hand, Xueqi lightly tapped the Philosopher's Stone on the magic crystal in his left hand. In the next moment, the Philosopher's Stone released a faint blood-red glow. Following which, the magic crystal in Xueqi's left hand transformed into dust and scattered across the floor, leaving nothing behind. A magic crystal which cost 8 silver coins was gone, just like that. In the god's domain, 8 silver coins were the current equivalent of a day's income for an entire elite team. However, without even blinking, Xueqi snatched a second magic crystal from the table and attempted the elemental refinement once more. 2 seconds later, another pile of dust scattered to the floor. After over 100 consecutive attempts and failing every time, Xueqi stopped and re-evaluated his actions. Is it not possible with elemental refinement? Xueqi frowned at the dust-covered floor. There were not many members in Zero Wing, so the number of accumulated magic crystals was not high. There had been only around 600 in the guild warehouse. Meanwhile, Xueqi had not obtained a single mana stone, even after refining over 100 magic crystals. At this rate, he would never refine 21 mana stones. No, it is just because the success rate is so low. Do I need to raise my chances before it'll work? Mana stones are the product of polymerization of magic crystals. Logically, it should be possible to refine a magic crystal into a mana stone. Is it because the magic crystal's quality is too poor? Thinking up to this point, Xueqi took another magic crystal and tested his theory. This time, after clicking Refine, Xueqi thoroughly focused on observing the changes that occurred during the refinement process of the magic crystal. After God's domain underwent its first evolution, both forging and alchemy had become far more realistic. Moreover, Xueqi was currently playing the game using a virtual gaming cabin which possessed a synchronization rate of 97%. Hence, if he observed the refinement process of the magic crystal carefully, he might discern the cause for failure. However, the refinement process happened far too quickly. Even if Xueqi had exceptional dynamic vision, everything still happened in a flash. It was too hard to see anything. System recording, activate full simulation mode, Xueqi suddenly said. System. Please hold for system identification. System. Interface used by player detected as the virtual gaming cabin. Full simulation mode is supported. System. Full simulation mode has activated. After the system activated full simulation mode, Xueqi picked up a magic crystal and attempted elemental refining once more. As expected, the magic crystal still crumbled into dust that scattered all over the floor. Unperturbed, Xueqi said, System, play the video recorded through full simulation mode. In the next moment, a 3D holographic image appeared before Xueqi's eyes, showing the exact scene when Xueqi had attempted elemental refinement on the magic crystal. Aside from allowing players to experience a synchronization rate of 97%, the virtual gaming cabin also allowed players to activate full simulation mode in the game. With this function, the videos players recorded in-game could be viewed as a holographic projection rather than on a flat surface. This function was unavailable to those who used both the ordinary and advanced helmets. In the God's domain of the past, if one were a master lifestyle player, they would have definitely purchased a virtual gaming cabin for themselves. They did so for the sole purpose of this holographic recording function. Through this function, players could realistically reproduce the videos they recorded. Players could experience what they normally couldn't through a flat-screen video, and this included the refinement process of the magic crystal. However, the main purpose of the full simulation mode lay in the analysis of enemies. Players could record their battles with enemies to study their enemies' fighting habits, defenses, attacks, dodges, and other detailed actions. After analyzing their enemies' habits and weaknesses, even if they were weaker than their opponents, players could take advantage of said habits and weaknesses to triumph against their enemies. In the past, this often happened in God's domain. It was especially true for fights between experts. At the same time, players could also utilize the holographic recording for self-reflection, improving weaknesses and discovering new techniques. This was one of the quickest ways for a player to improve themselves. This was also why players who used the virtual gaming cabins improved so quickly. In the past, Xueqi had done countless self-evaluations through using the full simulation mode, continuously improving his combat power. Back then, if he had used the virtual gaming cabin a few years earlier, he might have reached even greater heights. Unfortunately, Shadow had only a few million credits. A single virtual gaming cabin cost 3 million. How could Shadow possibly afford a virtual gaming cabin? Moreover, even if they purchased one, Xueqi would not have had access to it. Following which, Xueqi adjusted the settings of the holographic recording and played the refinement process into slow motion. That way, he could fully observe and analyze the entire process in detail without needing to waste magic crystals and stress his eyesight over and over. After observing the process dozens of times, Xueqi finally discovered the reason. As expected, the mana density inside the magic crystals is too low. I wouldn't get a single complete mana stone even if I used the elemental refinement 10,000 times. Although Xueqi had discovered the cause of his failures, he didn't have a solution. In God's domain, there was no difference in quality between magic crystals. In other words, it was simply impossible to obtain a mana stone through refining mana crystals. Xueqi could not help his frustration. If refinement could not work, then he had to go at it from another angle. The only method he had left was to use alchemical synthesis, combining two magic crystals into one. Once the accumulated mana inside the magic crystals reached a sufficient level, it would become a mana stone naturally. However, how could alchemical synthesis be easy? Even a grandmaster alchemist would struggle with alchemical synthesis. The price they had to pay would also exceed the value of the final product. Normally, nobody would willingly take on such a risk. Meanwhile, Xueqi was merely a forging apprentice. He was not even an alchemist to begin with. His chances of successful alchemical synthesis were abysmal. On the other hand, the Philosopher's Stone, an alchemy treasure, had such an ability. However, the Philosopher's Stone Xueqi had right now was a defective product. He could only use alchemical conversion and elemental refinement, not alchemical synthesis. That's right. If one Philosopher's Stone won't do, what about two? Xueqi suddenly recalled the fragmented piece of Philosopher's Stone that he had obtained from the god's grave. The Philosopher's Stone had been broken into 5 fragments, so its abilities had greatly weakened. However, the Philosopher's Stone was inherently of one body. As long as Xueqi could gather all 5 fragments, he could restore the Philosopher's Stone. Although Xueqi did not possess all 5 fragments at the moment, if he fused the 2 fragments he had, it should become much stronger than 1 fragment alone. I can only give it a try. Xueqi had no other options. The Philosopher's Stone was his only hope. The Philosopher's Stone had broken into 5 fragments of different sizes, and the abilities each fragment possessed were different. The Philosopher's Stone Xueqi had obtained from the god's grave was slightly smaller than the first one he had found. As it only possessed alchemical conversion, Xueqi had not intended to use it. Thinking up to this point, Xueqi rushed back to the bank and retrieved the other Philosopher's Stone from his warehouse before hurrying back to his forging room. Inside the forging room, Xueqi carefully combined the 2 Philosopher's Stones. System: do you wish to fuse the 2 Philosopher's Stones? Xueqi immediately clicked the Fuse button. Suddenly, the 2 Philosopher's Stones transformed into a pool of blood-red liquid and fused. The liquid then solidified into a fist-sized blood-red pearl. It was no longer an uneven block of stone. After the fusion completed, Xueqi picked up the newly formed Philosopher's Stone and checked its information. He wanted to know how powerful the Philosopher's Stone had become. Chapter 374. Results Beyond Imagination. Good, Xueqi sighed in relief when he read the information displayed. Philosopher's Stone, 36% completed. Epic rank special item, dropped upon death. A sacred item for alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone can be used to turn stone into gold, revive the dead, and more. However, the Sword Emperor, Knight, shattered the Philosopher's Stone into 5 pieces. However, the Philosopher's Stone possesses immense strength. As long as one gathers the 5 pieces, it will recover to its full strength. Active effect: due to being damaged, the Philosopher's Stone possesses less than 1/7 of its original strength. It can only be used for alchemical conversion, elemental refinement, alchemical synthesis, and elemental strengthening. Now that the Philosopher's Stone was capable of alchemical synthesis, Xueqi should be able to obtain mana stones easily. Just as he was about to begin the alchemical synthesis, a system notification alerted Xueqi. Moreover, it repeated 3 times. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Overwhelming Smile for becoming the first team to conquer the hard mode Bone Ruin. Rewarding 10,000 guild reputation and 10,000 guild popularity. All players within the team will be rewarded 100 reputation points in White River City and 10 reputation points in Star Moon Kingdom. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Overwhelming Smile for becoming the first team to conquer the hard mode Bone Ruin. Rewarding 10,000 guild reputation and 10,000 guild popularity. All players within the team will be rewarded 100 reputation points in White River City and 10 reputation points in Star Moon Kingdom. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Overwhelming Smile for becoming the first team to conquer the hard mode Bone Ruin. Rewarding 10,000 guild reputation and 10,000 guild popularity. All players within the team will be rewarded 100 reputation points in White River City and 10 reputation points in Star Moon Kingdom. What? The Bone Ruin is a 50-man team dungeon. A guild has already defeated it? Thinking that he had heard wrong, Xueqi quickly opened the system message log to take a look. However, they had indeed cleared the Bone Ruin. Overwhelming Smile? Isn't that one of the guilds controlled by Underworld, a second-rate guild dominant in Maple City? Xueqi could not help his surprise. He then carefully read the member list of the team that cleared Bone Ruin. How could they have cleared it first? There were over 100 cities throughout Star Moon Kingdom. There were simply too many guilds and experts within the kingdom to count. There were also plenty of first-rate guilds. Among the countless teams, the one with the greatest chance of being the first to clear a 50-man hard-mode team dungeon belonged to Gentle Snow in White River City. On this, Xueqi was certain. Immediately after Xueqi had entered White River City, he produced the White River City Guidebook. Gentle Snow had even spent a large sum to purchase the most detailed version, gaining a huge advantage over the other guilds right off the bat. Moreover, to secure the first clear of the 3 great dungeons, Gentle Snow had assembled many of Ouroboros' experts in White River City. She even purchased multiple fine gold-ranked arclight shields and a large stock of basic mana armor kits from Xueqi. Not even the core team of the most powerful first-rate guilds in Star Moon Kingdom could compete with Gentle Snow's team in terms of personnel or equipment. Yet, Gentle Snow's team had actually lost to a second-rate guild like Overwhelming Smile. Although Overwhelming Smile received plenty of support from Underworld in the form of money and experts, the first clear of 50-man hard-mode team dungeons was not easy to claim. If that were the case, Gentle Snow would have long since claimed the first clear of the Land of Death. Moreover, in Xueqi's memories, Overwhelming Smile had always been a very ordinary guild. In the end, Assassin's Alliance took them out, and they were swept away by the torrents of God's domain. Just what sort of secrets is Overwhelming Smile hiding? In the information Xueqi received from Absolute Heaven, there was nothing special about Overwhelming Smile. Despite Underworld going all out with its support, even sending 50 Underworld guards to help the guild, Xueqi did not believe for a second that Overwhelming Smile could take the lead in claiming the first clear of a 50-man team dungeon. Yet, Overwhelming Smile had done exactly that. This showed that Overwhelming Smile's team had an advantage that not even Gentle Snow's could compete with. If Overwhelming Smile continued to develop without rival guilds, in addition to Underworld's hidden support, even Xueqi could not guess how powerful the guild would become. The appearance of the 3 system notifications had immediately caused a sensation throughout Star Moon Kingdom. Previously, everyone had their guesses as to which first-rate guild would be the first to claim the first clear of a 50-man team dungeon. However, no one expected this result. A second-rate guild had actually accomplished what first-rate guilds couldn't. For a time, Overwhelming Smile had become the focus in Star Moon Kingdom. I need to hurry as well. Xueqi clutched the Philosopher's Stone and started the alchemical synthesis. No matter how powerful an enemy was, one's personal strength still mattered the most. Xueqi stored one magic crystal after another in the Philosopher's Stone. In the next moment, the synthesis bar began to slowly increase. The synthesis bar only reached 100% after Xueqi stored 50 magic crystals. Although Xueqi could now synthesize mana stones using magic crystals, the Philosopher's Stone in his possession was still incomplete. Hence, the synthesis rate was only 50%. This item really is an alchemical treasure. The power of this stone awed Xueqi. If Grandmaster alchemists could see this synthesis rate and the number of required base materials, it would leave them speechless with shock. Grandmaster alchemist's synthesis rate only hovered around 20%, which was already quite high. Meanwhile, normally over 200 base materials were required. Hence, nobody would willingly sacrifice high-tiered materials through alchemical synthesis. However, Grandmaster alchemists paled in comparison to the Philosopher's Stone. It was as expected of a treasure of alchemy. Meanwhile, alchemical combination was only a small part of the Philosopher's Stone's abilities. It was no wonder so many kingdoms and empires had gone to war over the Philosopher's Stone. Let's start then. Xueqi clicked the synthesize button. 3 seconds later, an additional fist-sized gray stone appeared in Xueqi's hand. This was none other than the Mana Stone. Awesome! After successfully synthesizing a Mana Stone, Xueqi quickly added more magic crystals into the Philosopher's Stone, starting the second round of alchemical synthesis. At the same time, Xueqi had also contacted Melancholic Smile and instructed her to purchase a large stock of magic crystals immediately. With the stockpile Zero Wing possessed, he wouldn't have enough to synthesize 21 mana stones. Even if the synthesis rate was 100%, he would need 1050 magic crystals too for 21 mana stones. With only a 50% rate, he would need at least 2100 magic crystals. Xueqi had previously used quite a lot of magic crystals, and he only had 508 remaining. By Xueqi's estimation, he would need at least 2000 more magic crystals. Guild leader. Please tell me you're joking. You want to purchase 2,000 magic crystals? The current market value for them is 8 silver coins each. 160 gold for 2,000 pieces. Moreover, this is the best and lowest cost. If we buy them in bulk, the prices in White River City will soar. When that happens, we'll need to pay at least double or triple the current price. Making a rough estimate, we'll need to spend at least 300 gold to get 2,000 magic crystals. Although Melancholic Smile had always dealt with the purchasing of materials for the Horizon Alliance, this was her first time handling a transaction that involved over 300 gold. She struggled against her sudden anxiety. If converted to credits, 300 gold coins would be over 4 million credits. All her life, she had never even seen so much money. It doesn't matter. Just get it done quickly. Xueqi couldn't care less about the potential consequences. His class change quest took priority. Even if he had to spend 1,000 gold to purchase the 2,000 magic crystals, he would not hesitate. By the time Melancholic Smile's group of 3 could mass-produce the basic strengthened armor kits, it would only be a short time before he earned the money back. After half an hour passed, Melancholic Smile delivered 2,000 magic crystals to Xueqi. She had experienced the pleasure of being a wealthy tycoon. Meanwhile, during this period, Xueqi had also kept himself busy. After using 500 magic crystals, he had an additional 6 mana stones. In addition, he had also produced some basic mana armor kits for his guild, as well as slightly raising his own forging proficiency. Hopefully my luck won't be too bad. Xueqi took the 2,000 magic crystals and started the alchemical synthesis once more. He used 100 pieces, 200 pieces. The new stock of magic crystals continuously diminished. After using 1,650 magic crystals, Xueqi had finally managed to collect 21 mana stones. Chapter 375. I'd like to borrow someone. Now that I've got 21 mana stones, I only need the 3 tier 4 NPCs. Xueqi thought about where he could find these NPCs as he collected the 21 mana stones and Philosopher's Stone from the table. There were only 3 tier 4 powerhouses currently residing in White River City. If Xueqi wanted to gather all 3 of them. Even if Xueqi were 10 times stronger than he was now and became a Count of White River City, he would not possess the authority to gather all 3 of these NPCs to help him. I guess I can only try my luck in the capital city. Starmoon City possessed the most high-tiered NPCs in Starmoon Kingdom, and it was where Xueqi would most likely get the help of 3 tier 4 NPCs. Following which, Xueqi left the Star Streak trading firm and ran towards the bank. His personal warehouse in the bank was the safest location to store the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone dropped upon death, and Xueqi did not want to lose the treasure under any circumstances. While walking down the middle of the street, Xueqi could hear many players discussing Overwhelming Smile. Say, how do you think Overwhelming Smile became so powerful? They actually claimed the first clear of a 50-man team dungeon so quickly. I heard that their guild didn't have many experts. Yeah, I'm confused too. Originally, I thought either Ouroboros or Zero Wing would be the first guild to claim a first clear. After all, the Snow Goddess, Gentle Snow, leads the team herself. Although Gentle Snow had neither accomplished any amazing feats nor is she a great expert ranked on the God's Domain experts list, everyone knows about her frightening battle records. She's probably no weaker than Black Flame. Now, however, both of these amazing guilds lost to a second-rate guild like Overwhelming Smile. I heard that the equipment dropped in a 50-man hard mode team dungeon is amazing. The attributes on the equipment are far superior than the equipment found in other dungeons. Now that Overwhelming Smile has equipment from Bone Ruin, they will have a much easier time raiding level 20 large-scale team dungeons. I heard that Overwhelming Smile has already become the overlord of Maple City. Moreover, they are currently mass recruiting players, and the benefits they offer are insanely good. There is also proof posted online showing that someone recently invested 1 billion credits for the guild's development. Just thinking about that much money makes me drool. I have never heard of any guild receiving such a large investment. I'm somewhat tempted to head over to Maple City to join them. Players on both sides of the street were talking about Overwhelming Smile. Overwhelming Smile had destroyed the previous momentum Zero Wing had garnered. Xueqi could only smile bitterly at this sudden shift. He had to admit that Overwhelming Smile's timing of obtaining the first clear of a large-scale team dungeon was perfect. Not only had Overwhelming Smile managed to spread their name throughout Star Moon Kingdom, but it had also suppressed Zero Wing's fame. However, this was only natural. Compared to individual strength, players were more concerned about dungeons. After all, dungeons were the main source of equipment in God's domain. It was especially true for high-quality equipment. Just after Xueqi returned the Philosopher's Stone to his personal warehouse, the system notified him of a voice communication request. It was Gentle Snow. "Miss Snow, how are you?" Xueqi greeted her warmly after answering the call. Although the situation of Overwhelming Smile's first clear had impacted Zero Wing, the one most affected by this result should be Gentle Snow. In order to claim the first clear of the Land of Death, she had paid a huge price. Other guilds could not compete with the advantages she possessed. Yet, just as she was about to harvest the fruit of her efforts, Overwhelming Smile stole the glory. "Guild leader Black Flame, I wish to discuss something with you." Gentle Snow's tone was indifferent. Only she understood her current state of mind. "Miss Snow, please speak your mind," Xueqi said, smiling. "I'd like to borrow someone," Gentle Snow said. "Borrow someone?" Xueqi was confused. Ouroboros had many experts. They should not lack personnel. "That's right. I wish to borrow Yifeng." Gentle Snow nodded, resolving Xueqi's confusion. "As for the price, I am willing to pay 5 million credits." "Borrow Yifeng?" Xueqi nearly stumbled. Just what was going through Gentle Snow's mind. Borrow Yifeng? Didn't that mean she was trying to borrow him? Since when did he have such great charm to attract the attention of the Snow Goddess? Moreover, Gentle Snow even offered an astronomical price of 5 million to borrow him. That was the equivalent of a famous gaming expert's annual salary. And she only wanted his help with a single matter? Wasn't Gentle Snow's opinion of him a little too high? "I know that this is somewhat abrupt. Honestly, I initially considered asking you, Guild Leader Black Flame. However, not only are you the guild leader of Zero Wing, but you are also very famous in Star Moon Kingdom. The implications for obtaining your help are too grave to ignore. Hence, my only option is to ask for Yifeng's help, as he is only a member of Zero Wing. However, I doubt he will help me without your explicit permission," Gentle Snow explained. If she had any other choice, she wouldn't be asking. However, now that Overwhelming Smile had claimed the first clear of a large-scale team dungeon, this was her only option. Listening to Gentle Snow's request, Xueqi could guess that Gentle Snow needed experts. However, these experts could not be too famous, and the more hidden they were from the public eye, the better. Thus, she thought of the now-forgotten Yifeng. "Although I wish I could agree to your request, Yifeng is currently busy in an extremely important task. I'm afraid he can't help you right now, Miss Snow. How about the other experts in Zero Wing?" Although Xueqi wished to help Gentle Snow, his class change quest took priority. "Other experts?" Gentle Snow fell silent for a moment, considering the idea. She then said, "It is possible if they are as skilled as Yifeng." "I'm afraid they have yet to reach that level," Xueqi said definitely. Setting aside techniques, if speaking purely in terms of weapons, equipment, and skills, nobody within the guild could even come close to being a match to him. In terms of techniques, though, Fire Dance, Aqua Rose, Violet Cloud, and Cola might catch up to him in the future. It was especially true for Violet Cloud, who had improved leaps and bounds with each passing day. If Xueqi hadn't had his decades' worth of experience campaigning in God's domain, Violet Cloud would have left him in the dust by now. "I'm afraid they won't do if they are not as strong as Yifeng," Gentle Snow said, disappointed. However, when she gave it more thought, how could great experts such as Yifeng be easy to find? She then asked, "Guild Leader Black Flame, how long will it take for Yifeng to complete his task?" Normally, an ordinary class change quest required 2 to 3 days to complete. Meanwhile, Xueqi's class change quest should be a lot more difficult. At the very least, he would require 3 to 5 days. "Around 5 days, Xueqi said, giving a conservative estimate. 5 days, huh? Gentle Snow's brows wrinkled slightly. After thinking for some time, she slowly asked, "Guild Leader Black Flame, will 5 days really be enough?" Ma'am. Xueqi nodded. Xueqi could tell that Gentle Snow was carefully considering a very important decision. I'll have to trouble guild leader Black Flame to pass on the message, then. I'll transfer 5 million credits into your account immediately. Gentle Snow sighed in relief upon hearing Shifeng's confident answer. She then disconnected the call after thanking him. Chapter 376. Great Divine Official. Based on Gentle Snow's tone, Shifeng did not think that things were as simple as he had first imagined. After experiencing a decade of battles and socializing between various guilds in God's domain, Shifeng was no longer the young and immature student that he had been in the past. This was merely the first clear of a large-scale team dungeon. At most, Ouroboros would lose the chance to earn some fame. Such a loss would not greatly affect the strength of the guild itself. In other words, Gentle Snow must have made some sort of personal bet regarding Overwhelming Smile being the first guild to claim the first clear of a large-scale team dungeon. However, she had obviously lost. 5 days, huh? It seems that I can't slack off. Now that Shifeng had agreed to help, he would not go back on his word. Unfortunately, even Shifeng was not completely confident that he could gain the help of 3 Tier 4 NPCs in Star Moon Kingdom. He needed to waste a lot of time to earn their assistance. It was not easy to ask NPCs for help. It was especially true for high-tiered NPCs. Following which, Shifeng took out the pass to Blackwing City, teleporting immediately. Being a neutral zone as well as a famous city in God's domain, Blackwing City was many times stronger than Star Moon Kingdom. Naturally, a lot of high-tiered NPCs would reside there. If luck would have it, he might even meet a Tier 5 powerhouse. One could not meet such an NPC even in the capital city of Star Moon Kingdom. It had been quite some time since the launch of God's domain. The population of the game had increased rapidly. The number of players who had obtained Blackwing City passes had also increased. As Shifeng walked down the wide streets of Blackwing City, he discovered far more players than before. Among these players, a majority were the upper echelons of guilds. Like Shifeng before, these upper echelons were here to trade with each other. They mainly traded hard stones, taking advantage of the price difference to make a huge profit. However, as more players began visiting Blackwing City, the potential profits would start to dwindle. This was also why Shifeng had stopped Aqua Rose from sending her subordinates to cooperate with other guilds. He planned to save the Blackwing City passes, only using them to attend the Blackwing City auction or purchase special tools such as the frost grenades. In reality, aside from being a trade hub, Blackwing City had one other fascinating feature: the city's beautiful scenery. In the past, when God's domain was in its middle stages, many upper echelons of guilds would frequently visit Blackwing City for leisure. Nothing could beat the stargazing tower of Blackwing City. The stargazing tower's interior was like a dream world. It looked absolutely stunning. In the past, many players even longed to spend the rest of their lives living inside the stargazing tower. It's been a long time since I entered the stargazing tower, Shifeng muttered as he gazed at the distant tower that pierced the sky. The stargazing tower was one of the architectural symbols of Blackwing City. Meanwhile, the reason Shifeng had come to Blackwing City this time was none other than to visit the stargazing tower. Based on Shifeng's understanding of God's domain's history, the stargazing tower of Blackwing City was older than the city itself. Blackwing City was established here because of the stargazing tower. The stargazing tower was a monument that had existed in God's domain before the Great Destruction. As for exactly when it had been built, not even Shifeng knew that. If there were anywhere in Blackwing City where one could find 3 Tier 4 NPCs at the same time, aside from the City Lord's Mansion and Magic Tower, the Stargazing Tower would be it. The City Lord's Mansion was self-explanatory. As for the Magic Tower, it was the residence of many mage NPCs of God's domain who single-mindedly pursued the limits of magic. Meanwhile, high-tiered NPCs had guarded the Stargazing Tower since ancient times. Hence, all 3 of these locations housed many high-tiered NPCs. However, players could not easily gain access to the City Lord's Mansion and the Magic Tower. Only a sightseeing spot like the Stargazing Tower permitted players to enter and leave as they wished. The moment Shifeng set foot inside the Stargazing Tower, he was met with cute little elemental sprites hovering and dancing around in the air. The center of the main floor contained a spiraling staircase leading to the top floor of the tower. Despite the absence of sunlight inside the Stargazing Tower, a faint blue glow illuminated the interior. Moreover, The walls looked like the starry skies at night, glimmering starlight covering the pitch-black walls to create a mesmerizing sight. In addition, the stargazing tower also possessed another mysterious effect. Calming heart. Any player that entered the stargazing tower, even those filled with burning rage, would find tranquility inside this place. At this moment, however, Xueqi did not have the time to appreciate the view. Immediately, he ascended the spiral staircase until he arrived at the Weeping Moon Pavilion of the stargazing tower. Before Xueqi could enter the Weeping Moon Pavilion, the two level 180 tier 2 black robe knights guarding the entrance stopped him. Outsiders are not allowed entry into the Weeping Moon Pavilion. This humble one is called Yi Feng, a demon hunter. I wish to meet Lord Aslan Heartbaru. Can I trouble you to inform the Lord? Xueqi immediately flashed his identity as a demon hunter to the two knights. As for his identity as the Viscount of White River City, it was utterly worthless here. Look, another fool is trying to enter the Weeping Moon Pavilion. I bet that he's a newcomer who has just arrived in Blackwing City. Everyone in Blackwing City knows that the Weeping Moon Pavilion is the most important place in the Stargazing Tower. It's where many power NPCs reside. I heard that there are many high-level quests available inside as well, and many experts have attempted to get in. But even after wasting a lot of time to become citizens of Blackwing City, the knights guarding the entrance still chased those experts away. Does that newcomer think he can get in just by asking? The Stargazing Tower was well known in Blackwing City. If a player visited the city often, they would know that the Weeping Moon Pavilion was off-limits to players. Hence, when the players inside the Stargazing Tower saw Xueqi's presumptuous actions, they all started ridiculing him. Outsiders are forbidden from entering the Weeping Moon Pavilion. The knights ignored Xueqi's identity as a demon hunter. The gaze they directed at him was as cold as before. They then moved to chase Xueqi away. However, before these black robe knights could take action, a voice came from inside the Weeping Moon Pavilion. Let him in. I know him. The two black robe knights immediately halted their assault. They then opened the doors to the Weeping Moon Pavilion, allowing Xueqi to enter. What the hell? Damn, that player actually got in. The players who had come to enjoy the show were all stupefied. Until now, not a single player had been allowed into the Weeping Moon Pavilion. Now, however, a newcomer actually got in. The first floor of the Weeping Moon Pavilion was a large and spacious hall. The hall was filled with books and crystal tools. Meanwhile, the ceiling was made of a gigantic water mirror that reflected the starry skies of the outside world. You're late. You've kept me waiting for a long time. How are you going to pay me for my time? A crisp and melodious voice reached Xueqi's ears. Turning around, Xueqi noticed a female priest in white robes walking down the staircase at a distance. Meanwhile, this female priest who emitted a sacred aura was none other than the divine official Charlene. Listening to Charlene's accusatory tone, Xueqi suddenly recalled the scene back at the City Hall of White River City. Back then, Weissman had told him that Charlene would wait for him in the Stargazing Tower. However, as he had been preoccupied at the time and had completely forgotten about it. Watching Charlene's slowly approaching figure with a saintly smile plastered on her face, a sense of foreboding bloomed in Xueqi's chest. Moreover, Charlene was no longer the Tier 3 divine official that Xueqi had known. Now, she was a Tier 4 great divine official. Chapter 377 Unknown. Xueqi stared at Charlene's information, dumbfounded by what he saw. From a level 8 NPC in Red Leaf Town, Charlene had first jumped to become a level 20 Tier 3 divine official. Then she grew from a level 20 Tier 3 divine official to a level 180 Tier 3 divine official. Now, she had grown even further, becoming a level 200 Tier 4 great divine official. She was now on the same level as the Tier 4 wizard, Weissman. Lady Charlene, I heard that you have been looking for me. May I know how I may be of service to you? Xueqi reluctantly asked after calming down. Whenever Xueqi encountered Charlene, he feared for his wallet. It was especially true when Charlene revealed that saintly smile of hers. Xueqi suddenly felt that he had come to the wrong place. If he had known that he would meet Charlene here, he would have definitely gone to Star Moon City instead. I do have something I need you to help me with, but this matter can only be addressed inside the Weeping Moon Pavilion. Unfortunately, The Weeping Moon Pavilion does not permit entry to outsiders. You should know that I am taking a big risk by allowing you in. Seeing as we are acquaintances, I can help you pay half of the 1,000 gold security deposit, but you will have to pay the remaining 500 gold yourself. Otherwise, these black robe knights will escort you out. Even I am helpless about this rule, Charlene sighed and shrugged, a helpless look on her face. Xuefeng immediately cast a scornful glare at Charlene. Again. She was trying to take his money again. This was the first time he had heard about a security deposit for entering the Weeping Moon Pavilion. He had only brought around 700 gold with him this time. Yet, in just a moment, Charlene had relieved him of 500 gold. However, even though Xuefeng's heart ached, he had no choice but to pay. Before Charlene, Xuefeng was like a helpless little boy. Charlene's senses were simply too sharp, and she would sniff out his weaknesses every time they met. This time as well, in order to find 3 Tier 4 NPCs to help him, he had to enter the Weeping Moon Pavilion no matter what. Although he had other plans he could use to try to enter the Weeping Moon Pavilion, there was no guarantee that those plans would succeed. Moreover, those plans would demand a lot of his time. Reluctantly, Xuefeng took 500 gold coins from his bag and handed them over to Charlene. Why are you looking at me like that? This is only a security deposit. It's not like you won't get it back, Charlene said. At this moment, her eyes were completely glued to the glittering gold coins in Xuefeng's hands. With a slight wave of her delicate finger, the gold coins flew into her pocket. Inwardly, Xuefeng flipped her off. Since this is a security deposit, why are you pocketing the money instead of the administrator of the stargazing tower? As if having read Xuefeng's thoughts, Charlene smiled faintly as she took out a silver moon emblem and pinned it to her chest. The words carved onto this silver moon emblem were, Stargazing Tower Administrator. Damn! Just how many jobs does she have? When Xuefeng saw the silver moon emblem on Charlene's chest, Xuefeng understood one thing. He would never see that 500 gold again. There was not even a trace of hope of getting his money back. In which case, he had not just paid a security deposit, but an entrance fee. Moreover, it was an entrance fee of 500 gold. Humph, little dummy. Did you really think that I'd lie to you? Charlene tapped the silver moon emblem on her chest, chuckling. All right, let's go then. Sighing helplessly, Xuefeng followed Charlene up the pavilion. As for the sword in the stone, it would not be too late to ask for Charlene's help after accepting her quest. The second floor of the Weeping Moon Pavilion consisted of a single wide corridor with many tightly locked rooms. It looked like an apartment complex. Massive stone doors loomed at the end of the corridor. Numerous images were carved onto the stone doors, and each image carried its own meaning and story. Charlene pointed towards the distant stone doors, smiling as she said, Beyond those doors lie the deepest secret of the stargazing tower. Do you want to go in and have a look? Can I? Xuefeng had always been curious about the stargazing tower. In God's domain, any monument that survived the ancient era was a massive treasure, not to mention a monument that had survived the Great Destruction. If a player could explore the secrets hidden beyond those stone doors, their path towards godhood would definitely become much easier. Unfortunately, Xuefeng had not been strong enough in the past, and he simply had not qualified to explore the secrets beyond those doors. Of course not. I should remind you that, without sufficient strength, you are better off not knowing certain things. Just like how you opened the entrance to the endless abyss. Now, not only do you carry a stigmata on your body, but you also plan to gather the 7 treasures. You are looking to get yourself killed. Do you know how many years the War God's Temple has spent trying to gather those treasures? Meanwhile, you haven't even obtained your Tier 1 class. Do you think it is even possible for you to accomplish something the War God's Temple cannot? They are only trying to. Forget it. There are some things you are better off not knowing. Charlene sighed as she looked at Xuefeng, emotions such as pity and anger filling her eyes. Suddenly, Xuefeng realized that Charlene was a unique NPC. It was no longer a matter just high intelligence. Charlene was almost human. Following which, Charlene led Xuefeng to her own room. Charlene's room was very simple. Other than a place to rest, bookshelves covered the remainder of her room. Rare, ancient books crowded the shelves, all of which would normally be impossible to find anywhere else. Sit. Charlene made a wave with her finger. In the next moment, A wooden chair appeared behind Xueqi. I've called you here because I have something I need you to do for me. People such as myself cannot complete this particular task. Only heaven-blessed individuals like you can accomplish it. However, this task is extremely dangerous. Will you accept it? Of course, if you do, I can give you a chance to obtain an advanced legacy. This would help your growth immensely in the future. If you can complete this task, I can even make you the lord of a city. You will possess your very own fiefdom. Charlin's words stunned Xueqi into a silence. He could obtain an advanced legacy just by accepting the quest? Moreover, if he could complete the quest, he could even become the lord of a city. Just what rank was this quest? System. Do you wish to accept Charlin's unknown quest? It seems that I won't know anything about the quest if I don't accept it. Xueqi felt uncertain when he saw Charlin's grave expression and the unknown quest. Xueqi was very clear about the iron law of God's domain. Equivalent exchange. The greater the risk, the greater the reward would be. The advanced legacy alone was no trivial matter, let alone the reward of becoming the lord of a city. Although he could afford to ignore the advanced legacy, the reward was something he could not ignore. Opportunity seldom knocks twice. It was now or never. The term becoming the lord of a city did not mean that players would be allowed to take control of a city controlled by NPCs such as White River City. To begin with, these NPC cities would never accept the rule of players. When Charlin spoke of becoming the lord of a city, it meant that she would reward Xueqi with his own fiefdom, qualifying him to establish his own city. Normally, when a guild wished to establish their own city, it would first need to capture a town not governed by any kingdom or empire. The second option was starting it from scratch and establishing a town from nothing. However, that was much more difficult, and the resources needed would also be several times higher than if the guild just captured a town. On the bright side, the guild could determine the location and geographic advantages of the town. Meanwhile, once they obtained a town, a guild would have to develop the town over a long period before it could become a city. Moreover, the conditions for a town's promotion to become a city were numerous and very demanding. However, Charlin's reward would allow Xueqi to establish a city directly, eliminating many of the challenges one would normally face. Chapter 378. Immortal Crown. A city completely under his control. This was a dream for Zero Wing. Xueqi had once led Shadow, a guild that owned 10 city-states, so he knew how valuable and how great the advantages were for owning his own city. Although Zero Wing was developing well at the moment, its lack of a stable source of income for credits was a major flaw. Other first-rate and second-rate guilds had support from wealthy corporations. These corporations would provide funding to their partnered guilds, allowing these guilds to develop steadily without worrying about a shortage of credits. Although Xueqi had many ways to earn coins in God's domain, it was not easy to support a guild with coins alone. Moreover, along with the guild's development and the influx of new members, its demand for coins would increase as well. Converting large sums of coins into credits was not a suitable long-term plan to develop a guild. However, it would be a different story if Xueqi possessed a city of his own. Why were large corporations willing to invest so many credits into a guild? Wasn't it to earn money? However, how were they going to earn money? The answer was a player-established autonomous city. If a guild possessed an autonomous city, it could start seeking investors to rent out shops and such in its city. Through these investors, the guild could then earn a large amount of credits and coins, thereby solving the problems of the guild's future development. Thus, Xueqi was determined to obtain the rights to establish his own city. Even if he had to pay a huge price in the process, he would. After a moment of silence, Xueqi answered, "Lady Charlin, I accept your conditions." "Good. I really did not choose the wrong person. Since you've agreed, the contract between us will be established from this moment onward." Charlin nodded and drew a silver rune in midair. She then imprinted the rune on the back of Xueqi's hand and said, "This is a spirit seal, and it can be used to absorb immortal souls. What I want you to do is to collect 10,000 immortal souls." "Collect immortal souls?" Xueqi said, unable to suppress his shock. "You want me to kill 10,000 heaven-blessed individuals?" When NPCs spoke of heaven-blessed individuals, they were referring to players. Players were immortal existences in God's domain, and they could resurrect infinitely at the cost of some levels and EXP. This was all due to the souls of players being immortal. Meanwhile, Xueqi could only obtain the immortal soul from the corpse of a player. Moreover, Xueqi needed to meet a few requirements before he could absorb the immortal soul of another player. First, he could not be 5 levels higher or lower than the target player. Second, he needed to kill the target player personally. Lastly, upon the target player's death, the distance between Xueqi and the player could not exceed 10 yards. If he failed to meet any of these conditions, he would not absorb the player's immortal soul. For the NPCs of God's domain, absorbing the immortal souls of heaven-blessed individuals was taboo. If Xueqi were discovered doing so, no one, NPCs or players, would hold back from killing him. As to why players would try to kill Xueqi as well, it was because any players who lost their immortal souls would be barred from logging into the game for a long time. It was a punishment more severe than the penalty for death. Hence, there was no leeway for Xueqi if he were caught in the act. I never thought you would know about immortal souls. That's right. I require you to kill heaven-blessed individuals and collect their immortal souls, Charlene stated, slightly surprised that Xueqi actually knew about immortal souls. However, she had not planned to hide this fact to begin with. I know that I am making things very difficult for you by requesting such a thing, but we cannot repair the immortal crown without immortal souls. The immortal crown was originally a divine artifact used to suppress all evil beings. However, the crown was damaged the last time it was used to suppress the endless abyss. Meanwhile, the stargazing tower has already collected the other materials required to repair the immortal crown, and right now, we are only missing immortal souls. Initially, I called you here to help me collect immortal souls gradually. However, I had not expected the endless abyss to escape its confinement so soon. The endless abyss is simply too powerful. Without the immortal crown, we have no chance of resisting the invasion of the endless abyss. Since you started this scourge, naturally, you will have to take responsibility for it. In order to repair the immortal crown quickly, we need a large number of immortal souls. However, I do not want others to know of this, so I have no choice but to ask you to complete this task by yourself. The magic array that keeps the endless abyss in place will not last long. By my estimation, it will hold out for another 3 months. In 3 months, we will have no choice but to face the endless abyss directly. Hence, you must collect 10,000 immortal souls within that time. However, it won't be easy, which is why I asked you to meet me here. There are many legacies within the stargazing tower. As long as you can pass the test of one of those legacies, you will have a much easier time collecting the immortal souls. System. You have accepted the epic hidden quest Immortal Crown. Quest details. You are required to collect 10,000 immortal souls within 3 months. If you fail to do so, your soul will be cursed and barred from logging into God's domain for 1 month. In addition, your soul will enter a weakened state for 3 months, decreasing your attributes by 90% during this period. Xueqi's head started to ache after reading this quest notification. To put it simply, failure meant hell. Failing this quest would deal a heavy blow. If he could not log into God's domain for a month, just how far would he fall behind? Also, even after he could log back into God's domain, with all of his attributes decreased by 90%, how was he even supposed to play the game? With your current level, you already qualify to accept an advanced legacy. Will you the advanced legacies trial right now, or do you wish to challenge it after taking some time to prepare? Charlene asked patiently as she watched Xueqi. Oh, I should remind you that advanced legacies are extremely precious. Even with my status, I can only give you 1 chance. You must be careful. If you are not confident in succeeding, it is best to challenge it at another time. The trial of an advanced legacy is no less difficult than an epic quest. If you think that an advanced legacy will be too difficult for you, I can offer an intermediate legacy. Not only will the difficulty decrease, but you will also have 3 chances to complete it. Charlene explained the options patiently. Xueqi understood her intentions. In God's domain, a class change was the equivalent of obtaining the legacy of a higher-tiered class. Meanwhile, a majority of the players in God's domain would normally receive their class change quest from the class association in their respective city. By doing so, players would be challenging basic legacies. Intermediate legacies were 1 rank above basic legacies. Intermediate legacies were relatively rare in God's domain, and normally, these legacies allowed players to obtain a common hidden class. Advanced legacies were 1 rank higher. Advanced legacies were extremely rare, and players could take on a rare, hidden class. Astromancer was one of these rare, hidden classes. Peak legacies were one rank higher than advanced legacies. In God's domain, peak legacies were like phoenix's feathers. Even the stargazing tower should not possess such a legacy. In Xueqi's decade of playing God's domain, he had only seen a few people obtain peak legacies. After giving it some thought, Xueqi said earnestly, "Lady Charlene, can I pass this chance to another person?" To Xueqi, an advanced legacy held little significance. After all, he possessed the sword in the stone, a legacy item containing a peak legacy. How could he give up on a peak legacy to accept an advanced legacy? Chapter 379. Awaken. Xueqi's question stunned Charlene. She looked at Xueqi, surprise flashing in her beautiful eyes. What were advanced legacies? A heaven-blessed individual could only come across an opportunity like this if they were lucky. They'd never find an advanced legacy by searching alone. Even if one tried to trade 10 epic items, they could never afford it. Even she, the manager of the Stargazing Tower, had paid a massive price to obtain this one chance to challenge an advanced legacy. Yet, Xueqi wanted to give this precious chance to someone else. The legacies of the Stargazing Tower cannot be passed to others. If you do not wish to accept the legacy, I can give you an epic item as compensation instead, Charlene said, shaking her head. The words epic item were tempting. However, Xueqi was not satisfied. Lady Charlene, may I exchange the advanced legacy for a favor from you? Xueqi asked once more. A favor? Charlene grinned. Chuckling, she said, "Little dummy, do you know how valuable an advanced legacy is? And you want to trade it for a favor? Don't tell me you want big sister too." Looking at Charlene's blushing cheeks, sweat streamed down Xueqi's forehead. Hurriedly he said, "Don't get the wrong idea. You mustn't misunderstand me. I only want you to awaken an item for me. Only Tier 4 classes can awaken it." Awaken an item? Charlene was suddenly interested. She then focused on Xueqi, thoroughly scanning his body from top to bottom. Her eyes widened in surprise when her gaze landed on the bag hanging from Xueqi's waist. With a teasing laugh she said, "I don't see anything on your body that needs to be awakened though. You can't be asking me to wake that withered dragon hanging from your waist, right?" Based on Charlene's comment, Xueqi had finally confirmed something. Charlene could see the contents of his bag. This was how Charlene could always squeeze him dry every time they met. She hasn't discovered it? Xueqi felt that something amiss when he saw Charlene's ridiculing smile. Since she could see the contents of his bag, why didn't she discover the extraordinary power within the sword in the stone? If a Tier 0 player like himself could see it, how could a Tier 4 great divine official not? Thus, Xueqi removed the sword in the stone from his bag. Charlene, who had still been chuckling, immediately became serious upon the appearance of the sword in the stone. She was no longer laughing. Indescribable emotions flashed in her eyes as she fixed her gaze on the crystal-encased sword in Xueqi's hands. Charlene reacted as if the sword in Xueqi's hands had suddenly appeared out of thin air. "Just what is this? It actually escaped the detection of my eyes of God." Charlene was momentarily surprised. Even as she looked directly at the sword, her eyes of God could not discern any information. It was as if the sword before her did not exist. Eyes of God was a Tier 3 advanced detection spell, and even legendary items could not escape its detection. Yet, the sword in the stone had actually... "Can I have a closer look at it?" Charlene asked, her curiosity reaching its peak. Xueqi did not reject Charlene's request, handing the sword in the stone over to her. The moment Charlene received the sword, she immediately cast over a dozen spells in quick succession. Every time one of her spells faded, Charlene's expression would grow slightly more serious. "Amazing. It seems that I'll have to use my true abilities." Charlene smiled. Suddenly, a terrifying amount of mana burst forth from her body, and in the next instant, Charlene's holy light domain had devoured the room. Simultaneously, 2 golden magic arrays appeared on both the ceiling and the floor. Xueqi immediately felt his body grow heavy, the mana in the room rendering him immobile. Charlane's holy light domain was much stronger than the Tier 4 Sky Piercer Weissman had used against the Mechanical Slayer. At this moment, Xueqi had finally realized just how powerful Charlane was. It was no wonder why she could casually offer him the qualifications to establish his own city. However, Charlane was not done after summoning the twofold magic array, as her hands continuously drew line after line of divine runes in the air. After a short moment, the twofold magic array became a fourfold magic array, before finally becoming a sixfold magic array. At this moment, magic arrays covered all 6 sides of Charlane's room. The Tier 4 Sky Piercer Weissman had used only required a fourfold magic array to channel it. Yet, the spell Charlane channeled now required a sixfold magic array. At the very least, Charlane's spell should be a peak Tier 4 spell. Although Xueqi did not know what Charlane was trying to do, he felt incredibly fortunate. It seemed that asking Charlane to help him was the right choice after all. If Charlane could summon such a powerful magic array, her position in the stargazing tower should be relatively high. She might even be able to invite 3 Tier 4 NPCs to help him awaken the sword in the stone. At this moment, the runes Charlane drew seeped into the stone in the sword, which floated in midair. After another few minutes had passed, the golden divine runes separated from the stone in the sword and flew into Charlane's palm, forming a golden ball. Following which, the magic arrays disappeared from the room, and the stone in the sword landed in Charlane's hand once more. However, Charlane paid no attention to the sword in the stone. Instead, she focused the ball of divine runes, seemingly studying it. How could this be? Charlane muttered in utter disbelief. Not even divine appraisal, a peak Tier 4 spell, can analyze this sword. To think that you have such an item, I have really underestimated you. Even after exhausting every option I have, I still can't uncover a single thing about this item. How did you learn that this thing requires Tier 4 classes to awaken it? Charlane asked. By this time, she had completely given up on analyzing the stone in the sword. Xueqi wondered the same thing. I have simply used omniscient eyes. Charlane couldn't uncover even basic information about the sword in the stone. Just what kind of item was this? Omniscient eyes? Impossible. I couldn't analyze the sword even when I tried using the eyes of God. Charlane shook her head, slightly surprised by Xueqi's answer. However, she suddenly thought of a possibility. Don't tell me you have a golden stigmata. Xueqi nodded. No wonder. Charlane revealed a faint smile. Why didn't you tell me earlier, little dummy? Throughout God's domain, the omniscient eyes of the golden stigmata is only inferior to the eyes of truth. I really did not expect the war god's temple to be so generous as to give you a golden stigmata. Tell me then, what are the conditions to awaken this item? Charlane inquired as she pointed at the sword in the stone. 21 mana stones and 3 Tier 4 classes are needed to awaken the power slumbering within this sword. Xueqi recited the information he could see using the omniscient eyes. Little dummy, don't tell me you have 21 mana stones inside that bag of yours. Even big sister here doesn't have that many of them. Charlane's eyes glowed as she looked at Xueqi. Stretching out her jade-like hand, she said, Out with them then. I only have 21 pieces. Xueqi instantly panicked. What kind of person do you take me for? Charlane rolled her eyes at the sight of Xueqi's caution. She then said, Relax. I won't rob you. I just want to awaken the power inside this sword. It needs 3 Tier 4 classes to awaken this sword, Xueqi reminded, unwilling to hand over the mana stones. I know. However, do you think Tier 4 powerhouses have the time and energy to help you? Charlane said, disgruntled. This sword is no trivial matter. Fortunately, you met me. Otherwise, even if you found 3 Tier 4 powerhouses, they wouldn't help you. Their answers wouldn't change even if you offer each of them a fragmented legendary item. Chapter 380. Destroyer of Immortality. They won't help me even if I offer each of them a fragmented legendary item? Xueqi was taken aback. He did not think Charlane was lying. He had personally witnessed how extraordinary the sword in the stone was. Even Charlane, a Tier 4 great divine official, could not uncover its secrets. Meanwhile, he had only obtained the golden stigmata due to luck. Otherwise, he would have never known that the sword in the stone was a legacy item. Fortunately, I made the trip here. Otherwise, I would have missed my chance. Xueqi inwardly celebrated his luck as he looked at the sword in the stone. Originally, Xueqi had thought he only needed to hire 3 Tier 4 NPCs to help him. Now, it would seem that even if he found 3 Tier 4 NPC powerhouses, there was no price he could pay to gain their help. Based on Charlene had said, however, even if he could afford the price, he still couldn't awaken the power within the sword in the stone. Alright, let's begin. I too want to see just what sort of item this is. Little dummy, stand back. Charlene was greatly interested in the sword in the stone right now. After saying so, Charlene tossed the 21 mana stones into the air and started chanting an incantation. The 21 mana stones suddenly split up and flew in all directions. Fortunately, Charlene's room was sufficiently large. After the mana stones flew 20 yards, they immediately stopped, hovering in the air. The mana stones then started to spin slowly. In the next moment, silvery white light shone from under their feet. Xueqi immediately distanced himself from the magic array that appeared, watching silently from afar. As the 21 floating mana stones rotated, the sword in the stone hovered in the center of the magic array. Charlene then shouted. Suffocatingly dense mana filled the room, buzzing. As if unable to withstand this immense pressure, the 21 mana stones immediately shattered into dust, forming clouds of gray smoke that flowed into the sword in the stone. When the sword in the stone completely absorbed one of the mana stones, the legacy item emitted a thumping sound that resembled a heartbeat. Xueqi even wondered if his ears were playing tricks on him at first. However, as more mana stones fused with the sword, the thumping became much louder and more powerful. It was as if the disintegrated mana stones were waking an ancient beast from its deep slumber. However, as mana stones continued to drift into the sword, Charlene, who currently stood inside the magic array, grew weaker. By the time the 7th mana stone fused with the sword, Xueqi could clearly feel that only half of the terrifying mana that filled the room remained. At this moment, Charlene had also greatly weakened. As the 14th mana stone melded with the sword, Charlene began to grow pale. When the 21st and last mana stone fused with the sword, Charlene wavered. A gentle breeze could send her tumbling to the floor. At this moment, Xueqi finally realized that it was not easy to awaken the sword in the stone. Channeling a single magic array had weakened a Tier 4 powerhouse to such a degree. It was no wonder why Charlene had said that no Tier 4 powerhouse would agree to aid him, even if offered a fragmented legendary item. Charlene's power stunned Xueqi. She had managed to complete a task that required 3 Tier 4 classes. Her strength was simply too frightening. Just who is she? Xueqi grew curious about Charlene's identity. It was impossible for an ordinary NPC to grow so quickly. Moreover, back in the god's grave, Xueqi saw a woman who looked exactly like Charlene. Although Charlene's strength could not compete with that slumbering woman's, the aura the two gave off felt exactly the same. The intensity was the only difference. While Xueqi pondered Charlene's identity, the awakening ritual had come to an end. The silver magic array that covered the floor vanished. Boom! The sword in the stone hovering in the air suddenly fell, half its blade sinking into the floor. Sharp! Charlene, who was currently unstable from the drain of mana, could not hold back her shock when she saw the blade slide smoothly into the floor. Not even the Great Destruction had managed to destroy the stargazing tower. The strongest and highest quality materials had gone into this monument's construction. Magic arrays reinforced the building further. A full-powered blow from a Tier 4 sword emperor armed with a legendary ranked sword could not even scratch the floor. Yet, the hovering sword in the stone sunk effortlessly into the wood. By now, the transparent crystal encasing the sword had completely disappeared. Only a sword with a golden hilt and god remained, with a blade that was as pure and clear as a diamond. Impossible! This is actually the destroyer of immortality. Charlene was tongue-tied when she read the sword in the stone's information, which was now fully visible. Destroyer of immortality. A creation born of nature, containing unrivaled power. Although it was greatly damaged during the war between the ancient gods, it had absorbed some of their powers. If one can master this blade, they will obtain a trace of the ancient gods' powers. Class restriction. Berserker and Swordsman. Destroyer of immortality? Xueqi was puzzled. He had never heard this name before. Reading the item's introduction, apparently, its origin was quite amazing. The ancient gods had actually used this weapon. Xueqi knew a little about the ancient gods. The ancient gods were born from nature, and they had the power to decimate the heaven and earth. Even the Tier 6 god-ranked classes of God's domain were no more than ants before an ancient god. They were practically invincible. However, all of these ancient gods had perished in the Great Ancient War. You must have heaven-defying luck. It is no wonder you didn't want an advanced legacy. Charlene smiled. She then explained, the Destroyer of Immortality is one of the 10 great saint legacy items in ancient records. Moreover, the legacy is unique. Not even the peak legacy of the Stargazing Tower can compete with it. 10 great saint legacies? Xueqi was at a loss. The highest legacies he had heard of in the past were peak legacies. This was the first time he had heard of the 10 great saint legacies. I, too, have only read about the 10 great saint legacies. Today is my first time actually seeing one in person. However, I don't know any details about them. Even so, I will remind you not to look down on these saint legacies. A peak legacy is already as difficult as a legendary quest. At the very least, the trial of 10 great saint legacies should be just as difficult. If you are not confident in succeeding, you should not recklessly attempt to challenge it. You might lose your life, even if you are a heaven-blessed individual. Charlene was extraordinarily serious when she looked at Xueqi, even more serious than when she gave the Immortal Crown quest to Xueqi. When she spoke of death, she had even paused for a moment. Xueqi could clearly discern the kindness in Charlene's tone, and he, too, knew how dangerous and difficult the trial of a saint legacy would be. God's domain's law of equivalent exchange held true everywhere. Naturally, there was danger in challenging the trial of a legacy. Take basic legacies for example. If a player failed to clear the trial of a basic legacy, they would lose 3 levels, be weakened for 3 days, and be barred from accepting the trial again for 10 days. Meanwhile, the penalty for failing an intermediate legacy was much harsher. Players would lose 5 levels, be weakened for 7 days, be barred from accepting the trial for 20 days, and permanently lose a small portion of their attributes. 4 advanced legacies and peak legacies. Xueqi was 90% certain that he could complete an advanced legacy. As for a peak legacy, Xueqi had around 50% to 60% certainty of success. However, the legacy he had eagerly looked forward to turned out to be one of the 10 great saint legacies. Xueqi had never even heard of a saint legacy, so he was not too sure how well he would fare. Chapter 381. Attacks from Above and Below. Charlene was a Tier 4 Great Divine official. The information she had access to would definitely surpass a player like Xueqi. The fact that she knew about the Destroyer of Immortality proved this point. Should I wait a little longer? Xueqi pondered in silence as he looked at the translucent sword that penetrated the ground. Now that the Destroyer of Immortality had awakened, he could take on the legacy trial any time he wanted to. He could slowly build his strength before challenging the trial. That way, he would have a higher chance of successfully clearing it. After all, as one of the 10 great saint legacies, the consequences of failure would be severe. It might turn out just as Charlene had guessed. Death. Heaven-blessed individuals were immortal existences, being able to resurrect infinitely. Yet, despite knowing this, Charlene had still made such an ominous claim. This proved that the penalty of failure would be unbearable, and players would have no choice but to delete their accounts and start all over again. The wisest choice for Xueqi right now was to first increase his strength before challenging the Saint Legacy's trial. However, after campaigning in God's domain for a decade, Xueqi understood one thing clearly. Life in God's domain was like a boat sailing against the current. Either he kept going forward, or he would fall behind. Pursuing stability constantly was not enough. Sometimes, one needed to take risks to achieve a breakthrough. Moreover, Xueqi did not have too much time to waste. Risks and opportunities coexisted. The sooner he obtained the Saint Legacy, the smoother his path towards godhood would be. Originally, Xueqi had not been certain that he could become a Tier 5 class in this life. To do so, he had to plan and prepare carefully. As for becoming a Tier 6 God-ranked class, that was nigh impossible. That was the apex of God's domain. How could something like that be so easy to achieve? Xueqi was aware of his own capabilities. His current performance right now was only amazing due to his decade of experience playing God's domain. It was not possible to walk the path toward godhood just by having a few additional years of experience. However, if he gained one of the 10 great saint classes earlier on, coupling it with careful planning and preparation, he would have a better chance of becoming a god. Xueqi stepped up to the destroyer of immortality. He then grabbed the golden hilt of the sword. When he tried to pull the translucent blade out of the ground, however, it did not budge. No matter how much strength Xueqi exerted, the sword remained firmly stuck in the floor. Instead, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System. Do you wish to accept the legacy trial? Remaining time, 23 hours 54 minutes. Well shit. Xueqi bitterly smiled. The destroyer of immortality never intended to give him a chance to raise his strength. Sighing, Xueqi accepted the trial. Suddenly, the destroyer of immortality released a divine golden light, enveloping Xueqi. In the next moment, both the destroyer of immortality and Xueqi vanished from the room. Space transfer. Charlin's eyes flashed with surprise at both Xueqi's and the destroyer of immortality's sudden disappearance. A powerful barrier protected the stargazing tower, and all forms of teleportation magic were rendered ineffective here, regardless of whether said magic was used to enter or leave the tower. Yet, the destroyer of immortality had effortlessly accomplished this feat. Hopefully, that little dummy can pass the trials. Charlin smiled faintly, gazing at the spot where Xueqi had stood a moment ago. Awakening that sword drained me to such a degree. I'll have to rest for a long time. I let him off too lightly by taking only 500 gold. The next time we meet, I'll collect this debt. With interest. At this moment, Xueqi was at a complete loss. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in a dimly illuminated field. Swords were everywhere from the sky to the earth. This place was literally a world of swords. In the distance, Xueqi could see a mountain piercing the sky. A faint, silver glow radiated from the mountain's peak, and it was the only source of light in this dim world. System. You have discovered the origin sword domain. System. You are in a unique realm. All forms of communications have been sealed. You are unable to make contact with the outside world. It would seem that this origin sword domain is independent of God's domain. Xueqi tried to call up the system map. However, the map was blank. Xueqi then took a look at his surroundings. As far as the eye could see, other than the mountain in the distance, there was nothing but flatlands. Moreover, the further one traveled from the mountain, the darker it would become. It looks like the only exit is at the peak of that mountain. Xueqi then examined the swords stabbed into the ground, all of which were immovable. Some even resembled buildings and plants. Unlike flowers and trees, however, Xueqi would receive damage if he touched these blades. To put it simply, he needed to avoid these swords as he advanced. As for the swords suspended in the sky, so long as he did not fly, they weren't a threat. However, this world only took a moment to correct that assumption. After Xueqi took a few steps forward, several swords descended from the sky. One of them just happened to slice past his arm, causing -200 damage. Crap! Raining swords! Xueqi looked at the swords around him, realizing why so many swords pierced the ground. Moreover, the swords that descended from the sky dealt a lot more damage than the swords on the ground. I'm guessing this trial requires players to avoid the swords on the ground while dodging the swords descending from the sky? Xueqi remained still for the moment. He silently observed his surroundings, searching for the best path towards the mountain. He chose to stand still because the moment he moved, the swords in the sky would start to fall. Most likely, the swords in the sky were set to fall based on the player's movements. Sure enough, this world is trying to kill me. After waiting for a moment, Xueqi discovered that the swords in the sky had not fallen. However, before he could rejoice over this discovery, the swords in the ground started trembling, and one after another, these swords sunk into the ground, vanishing completely. Feeling that something was amiss, Xueqi kept his gaze on the ground beneath his feet. Suddenly, tens of swords sprung up from the ground beneath him, soaring into the sky. Reacting quickly, Xueqi performed a backflip, dodging these blades. However, due to his backflip, the swords above plunged towards him. This is a joke, right? Xueqi immediately unsheathed the abyssal blade and Purgatory's shadow, defending against the incoming flying swords. One after another, blades of light struck the flying swords, scattering them. After these attacks, Xueqi finally realized that this world intended to toy with him until he died. If he rested, the swords on the ground would attack him after a short time. If he moved, the swords hovering in the sky would rain down on him. Such an attack pattern allowed him little to no time to rest or recover, keeping him on guard. Xueqi also discovered something else. The swords that descended from the sky were growing more accurate and faster as he advanced. Is this place trying to exhaust me to death? Xueqi's lips curled up slightly with amusement. Immediately, he switched out the aura of space on the 7 luminaries ring for the aura of wind, increasing both his movement speed and attack speed by 40% and agility by 30%. He then dashed towards the distant mountain. The moment Xueqi moved, the countless blades in the sky began their assault. They all turned their blades towards Xueqi and shot towards him. However, Xueqi was like a gust of wind. Relying on his movement speed alone, he avoided most of the attacks. In addition, his increased attack speed allowed him to strike down the remaining swords effortlessly as he darted onward. However, after running for a few minutes, the ground in front of Xueqi suddenly split apart. In the next moment, bone knights in silver armor crawled out of the fissure, every one of them emitting frightening killing intent as they rushed towards him. Skeleton warrior, undead creature, elite rank. Level 25. HP 20, 000/20, 000. Chapter 382. Legacy Chapter. The silver suits of armor shone brilliantly under the dimly lit sky, creating an exceptionally conspicuous sight. The assault from all directions forced Xueqi to an abrupt halt. Facing such intense attacks, Xueqi had no choice but to stop. Even he was not confident of defending against so many attacks on the run. This won't do. I won't last long at this rate. I need to move faster. Looking at the swords decorating the sky, an idea, inspired by his years of experience, struck Xueqi. Purgatory power. Xueqi's attack speed rose by 100%. He then brandished the abyssal blade and the Purgatory's shadow, sending blades of light at the incoming swords and striking them down. After continuing this process for 3 seconds, Xueqi successfully deflected all of the swords that attacked him, scattering them around him. Undead creature? Xueqi activated omniscient eyes and examined the distant skeleton warriors. Xueqi could not learn anything about these undead monsters. If he faced them one-on-one, Xueqi was confident that he could defeat such a monster with ease. If he had to face a group of them, however, even he was not certain that he would win. Moreover, the swords in the sky still posed a huge threat. When the two combined, Xueqi's very life was at risk. However, Xueqi did not know if death meant failing the legacy trial. If it did, then he would truly be finished. As a precaution, Xueqi did not immediately move after fending off the flying swords. Instead, he stopped to think of an appropriate countermeasure. Changing my path isn't possible. For now, let's put these skeleton warriors to the test. The only exit was at the mountain's peak. Naturally, Xueqi could not retreat. However, charging forward rashly and accidentally losing his life was unwise. Hence, Xueqi activated Phantom Kill, sending his doppelganger charging towards the skeleton warriors to test their strength. By doing so, not only could he buy himself time to come up with a defense against these undead monsters, but he could also avoid falling into any traps. After all, this was the trial of one of the 10 great saint legacies. He could not afford to be careless. The doppelganger possessed 70% of Xueqi's attributes. It was more than enough to deal with a single skeleton warrior. The doppelganger dodged the swords from above while approaching the skeleton warriors. However, when only a distance of 40 yards remained between them, the skeleton warriors still showed no signs of taking action. Instead, the monsters only focused on the doppelganger's every movement, killing intent oozing from their entire bodies. It looked as if they would explode at any moment. Disregarding the skeleton warrior's lack of a reaction, the doppelganger threw the blazing meteor at the closest undead creature. The weapon struck the monster's thigh, causing -816 damage. It would seem that the skeleton warriors only possessed mediocre defense. However, the instant the skeleton warrior was struck, it started moving and charged at Xueqi's doppelganger. The skeleton warrior that had been hit was not the only one to move. The surrounding dozen or so undead creatures charged at the doppelganger as well. Although the skeleton warriors wore full sets of silver armor, their movement speed was extremely fast. It took them less than 5 seconds to close the 40-yard gap. However, Xueqi's doppelganger did not stay idle as these undead creatures charged. Instead, it attacked with the blazing meteor again as it retreated swiftly. In terms of speed, the doppelganger clearly held the advantage. Despite needing to dodge the constant stream of attacks from the sky, it was still a thread faster than the skeleton warriors. As this game of cat and mouse continued, the HP of the skeleton warrior leading the charge gradually decreased. Everything proceeded smoothly, and Xueqi, who stood in the distance, did not discover any other traps hidden in this field. Moreover, the skeleton warriors possessed low intelligence. Aside from carrying out some basic defensive maneuvers, the group of undead creatures single-mindedly chased the doppelganger. After a short moment, the doppelganger killed its first monster. Although a skeleton warrior had died, other than a tiny amount of skill proficiency, Xueqi received nothing at all. He did not receive even a tiny amount of EXP. Even after the dozen or so skeleton warriors were wiped out, Xueqi did not receive anything. Fortunately, he didn't really care. He was in a legacy trial right now. His only goal was to clear the trial. As for whether or not he could earn EXP or items, that was not very important. With the doppelgangers probing, Xueqi's advance became much easier. There were no other traps in the surrounding area. The skeleton warriors also did not possess high intelligence or troublesome skills. As long as he dealt with the attacks from the sky properly, he could deal with these skeleton warriors by kiting them. What the doppelganger could do, Xueqi could do better. Xueqi's movement speed was too fast. Unlike the doppelganger, not only could Xueqi attack using the blazing meteor, but he could also cast AoE skills such as Thundering Flash and Earth Splitter to deplete the skeleton warriors' HPs while maintaining the distance between them. When the arcs of lightning weaved across the skeleton warriors, they dealt damages of -1,242, -1,784, and -2,439 to the undead creatures. Some of the skeleton warriors who received critical hits lost over half their HP. In less than 10 minutes, Xueqi had reduced the hundreds of skeleton warriors into piles of pearly white bones scattered across the plains. What's going on with these bones? Just as Xueqi was about to depart from this field of bones, he noticed the bones begin to tremble. The bones then gathered. In the blink of an eye, these bones transformed into an entirely new monster. This monster was 3 times the size of the skeleton warriors from before. It wielded a skeletal giant axe in one hand and a thick black chain in the other. Dark green flames burned in its empty eye sockets. Emitting an angry roar, it charged at Xueqi with massive, thudding steps. With every step this monster took, the land beneath its feet would crack and shatter. One could see just how powerful this monster was. Skeleton giant, undead creature, chieftain rank. Level 30. HP 250, 000/250, 000. Why is it a level 30 chieftain? Xueqi was stunned. He instantly activated Windwalk and escaped. There was no way he could face a level 30 chieftain head-on while dealing with the incoming attacks from the countless swords in the sky. Moreover, with the skeleton giant's strength, a direct hit with its axe was all it needed to end Xueqi's life. Even if Xueqi dodged the monster's attack, the descending swords were no laughing matter. Each sword could deal -200 damage. Currently, Xueqi's HP was only slightly over 3,000. If 16 swords to hit him, he would lose his life all the same. Although the skeleton giant was colossal, it was frighteningly quick. Despite having activated Windwalk, Xueqi still could not shake off the skeleton giant, the distance between them never increasing. However, Xueqi also had to endure the rain of swords as he escaped. To avoid the blades, he was oftentimes forced to take action and strike back, affecting his speed as a result. Sometimes, in order to dodge a more densely packed attack, Xueqi had no choice but to dodge sideways, making a 90-degree turn. However, after Xueqi turned, the skeleton giant behind him would stumble. Its speed greatly fell when it changed directions, allowing Xueqi to widen the gap between them. Moreover, due to the skeleton giant's large frame, the sudden turn helped Xueqi block a few of the flying swords. When the sword struck the skeleton giant's body, the monster also received -200 damage from each attack. How could I forget? Due to their joints, skeletal monsters have difficulty dodging and turning. Xueqi smiled faintly upon seeing the skeleton giant's situation. Not only was the skeleton giant slow to react, but it would also receive damage from the swords above. Moreover, the skeleton giant's huge frame made the perfect shield. Considering the situation, a plan formed in Xueqi's mind, following which, he made a 180-degree turn and charged directly at the skeleton giant's back. To deal with Xueqi, the skeleton giant had no choice but to turn around as well. Although its body spun relatively quickly, its feet could not keep up with its body. By the time the skeleton giant had stabilized itself and started swinging its giant axe, Xueqi had arrived beside its feet. As the swords in the sky cascaded down towards Xueqi, due to the skeleton giant being in the way, the monster suffered the full brunt of the rain of swords. Now, not only did the swords in the sky no longer pose a threat to Xueqi, but they also benefited him. Seeing as his plan's success, Xueqi began to attack the skeleton giant. Meanwhile, no matter how many times the skeleton giant turned its body, Xueqi would always appear behind it. Faced with the continuous assault from Xueqi and the swords, the skeleton giant's HP fell rapidly. Half an hour later, the skeleton giant crumbled. Even until its death, it had not landed a hit on Xueqi. On the contrary, it had become his shield, blocking the falling blades. This fellow dropped an item? Xueqi noticed a golden piece of paper with divine runes laying beside the skeleton giant's remains. When Xueqi picked it up and tried to check its information, he only received an unknown in reply. Hence, Xueqi used the omniscient eyes. Legacy Chapter, 7th page, a scattered page that has fallen out of a legacy book written by the ancient gods. This legacy book holds records for one of the 10 great saint legacies. It has a total of 50 pages. After gathering all of the pages, the saint legacy contained within the legacy book will become available. Class requirements: Berserker, Swordsman. Chapter 383, Blade Demon. So, this is it, huh? Reading the item's information, Xueqi got a general understanding of the situation. Even if he ran to the mountain and reached its peak, that wouldn't mean he passed the trial. He needed to collect all 50 legacy chapters to pass. However, now that he knew what he needed to do, this trial would be much easier to defeat. He just had to search for skeleton warriors and kill skeleton giants to obtain legacy chapters. So, Xueqi began hunting around the fields for skeleton warriors. Although the swords in the sky were a nuisance, Xueqi gradually understood their attack patterns and could dodge them more efficiently. Soon, they were no longer much of an issue. Even when dealing with a large group of skeleton warriors, these swords would nick him a few times at most, dealing negligible damage. After killing 12 skeleton giants in a row, Xueqi discovered a problem. Not every skeleton giant would drop a legacy chapter. In fact, the drop rate was very low. After killing 12 skeleton giants, he only obtained 2 legacy chapters. None of the monsters Xueqi killed gave him any EXP, either. He also needed to dodge the swords from above constantly. Hunting these skeleton giants was truly exhausting, both physically and mentally. If not for the fact that one of the 10 great saint legacies beckoned him, Xueqi would never tolerate such a strenuous and unrewarding task. While Xueqi searched for skeleton warriors all around the mountain, an incident occurred in White River City. Dark Star, a guild that White River City had already forgotten, suddenly declared its dissolution. This news came as a great shock to everyone. Some of the guilds who had previously allied themselves with Dark Star simultaneously announced their dissolution as well. Originally, everyone had thought that White River City was on the path of becoming the overlord of Star Moon Kingdom. However, no one could have expected the following development. Half a day after the dissolution of these guilds, a branch guild of Overwhelming Smile suddenly appeared in White River City. More shockingly, Lone Tyrant, who was originally the guild leader of Dark Star, had become the vice leader that led Overwhelming Smile's branch guild. Furthermore, the benefits that Overwhelming Smile offered were impressive, at least twice as valuable as what Dark Star had previously offered. It was a blatant display of wealth. The members of the dissolved guilds promptly joined Overwhelming Smile's White River City branch. Within half a day since Overwhelming Smile's branch guild's establishment, its member count had already reached 30,000. Moreover, that number was still increasing. It continuously recruited new members, thinking of ways to steal players from Zero Wing. Big Sis Aqua, Overwhelming Smile thinks too little of us. Instead of recruiting in their hometown of Maple City, they ran all the way here to fight us over members. The guild leader also suddenly disappeared and cannot be contacted. If we allow Overwhelming Smile to continue, by the time we start our recruitment tomorrow, they will have stolen all the good saplings. Big Sis Aqua, why don't we start recruiting right now? Snow Goose asked anxiously. It had been Zero Wing's fame that had attracted players from other cities. Yet, now, Overwhelming Smile had come to steal the fruit of victory. It was truly despicable. Overwhelming Smile is truly ambitious. They've only obtained the first clear of a large-scale team dungeon, yet, already, they're hungering after White River City. Aqua Rose's eyes flashed with rage. Although she was not afraid of losing potential guild members, she could not stand Overwhelming Smile's arrogant attitude. They were clearly trying to provoke Zero Wing. Does Overwhelming Smile think it is so easy to weave a web in White River City? Let's start advertising our recruitment right now. I want to see how a second-rate guild without a guild residence plans to compete with Zero Wing in terms of benefits. Once Zero Wing began to prepare for its recruitment fervently as well, White River City exploded with activity. On one side, there was Overwhelming Smile, a guild that had claimed the first clear of a large-scale team dungeon and annexed Dark Star, one of the top 6 guilds of White River City. On the other side stood Zero Wing, a guild that possessed a guild residence and was led by Star Moon Kingdom's #1 expert. Many players on the forums were also discussing which guild they should join. Big Brother Shadow Sword, White River City is truly interesting. Despite only being the 5th-ranking city of Star Moon Kingdom, it is now contested over by the 2 most popular guilds in the kingdom. Which guild do you think these independent players will join? The female guardian knight, Turtledove, asked the berserker beside her, Shadow Sword, with an amused smile on her face. I don't know what others will choose, but my goal from the very beginning has been to join Zero Wing. Shadow Sword wasn't interested in the competition between the 2 guilds. His only thoughts right now were of passing Zero Wing's assessment and polishing his strength by learning from the experts in Zero Wing. He also hoped to learn from Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame. He had no interest in anything beyond that. Meanwhile, after spending an entire day at the Origin Sword domain, Xueqi had collected 21 legacy chapters. Oh, what's that monster? At this moment, Xueqi, who stood at the foot of Sword Peak Mountain, discovered a monster of steel slowly descended the mountain. This steel monster seemed to be patrolling its territory. Although this monster was not large, only twice as tall as Xueqi, all 4 of its limbs were blades. The rest of its body was made of pitch-black steel, decorated with spikes. It looked like a machine of slaughter. Although Xueqi wanted to know this monster's information, he only received an unknown when he attempted to identify it. Even observing eyes failed to yield any results. Hence, Xueqi had no choice but to use omniscient eyes. Blade Demon, Demonic Creature, Chieftain Rank. Level 30. HP 300, 000/300, 000. Xueqi's interest suddenly grew upon discovering that the Blade Demon was a chieftain-ranked monster. Since the chieftain-ranked skeleton giant had a chance to drop legacy chapters, the chieftain-ranked Blade Demon before him might drop the item as well. Fortunately, dealing with a single Blade Demon was much easier than destroying hundreds of skeleton warriors in addition to a skeleton giant. Moreover, the Blade Demon only had 300,000 HP. At most, it would only be slightly stronger than the skeleton giants. If so, Xueqi could defeat it easily. Of course, Xueqi would not rashly charge to his death. The only reason he had defeated the skeleton giants so easily was due to the monster's dull reactions and the aid of the swords in the sky. On the other hand, not only was the Blade Demon a stronger monster, but it also wasn't that large. Xueqi didn't expect its reaction time to be as slow. If Xueqi confronted the Blade Demon directly, he would only seek his own death. Hence, He needed to identify the monster's weakness. If it's a demonic creature, then the Demon Hunter title will suppress its strength. Let's use the doppelganger to test things out first, then. Thinking so, Xueqi switched out his Might of 1,000 title for the Demon Hunter title. The Demon Hunter title reduced the attributes of all darkness-type monsters within a 100-yard radius by 10% and increased Xueqi's damage towards darkness-type monsters by 10%. Demonic creatures were considered darkness-type monsters. Following which, Xueqi used Phantom Kill and sent his doppelganger charging forward. When the doppelganger was 40 yards away from the Blade Demon, it threw the blazing meteor at the monster. A red glow instantly crossed the distance between the doppelganger and the Blade Demon. Just as the blazing meteor was about to hit the Blade Demon's back, a black streak of light flashed over, striking the blazing meteor out of its path. What? Is it that amazing? Does it not have any blind spots? Xueqi muttered in shock. Xueqi's doppelganger had clearly launched its attack, yet, as if the Blade Demon had eyes in the back of its head, it deflected the flying projectile. Moreover, the Blade Demon's reaction was astonishingly quick. The skeleton giants paled in comparison. However, Xueqi did not believe that the Blade Demon had no blind spots. The doppelganger activated Windwalk and circled to the other side of the Blade Demon. Once again, it threw the blazing meteor, launching a series of attacks in quick succession. The blazing meteor shot at the Blade Demon again and again. However, no matter which angle it approached, the Blade Demon easily deflected it. Moreover, the monster moved extremely fast, leaving afterimages wherever it passed. In just a moment, the Blade Demon stood in front of Xueqi's doppelganger. Shwa! 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 In the blink of an eye, the Blade Demon had launched dozens of attacks. Despite the doppelganger having already activated Defensive Blade, the demon broke through the skill almost instantly. The doppelganger only managed to block a few attacks before losing its life. Xueqi's eyes widened as he watched his doppelganger's death. However, after a brief moment of shock, Xueqi suddenly discovered that the Blade Demon had not returned to its wandering after killing the doppelganger. Instead, it turned around and charged directly at him. Chapter 384. Unique Set Equipment. Despite also being a level 30 chieftain, the Blade Demon was far more powerful than the skeleton giant. Realizing that he could not face the Blade Demon directly, Xueqi immediately activated Windwalk and ran. He wanted to break away from the combat area as quickly as possible. However, after running for over 100 yards, the Blade Demon was still on his tail. Although Xueqi's movement speed was much higher than the Blade Demon's, with the countless blades in the sky restraining him, Xueqi was not actually much faster than the Blade Demon. The distance between the two hovered around 30 yards. The Blade Demon was determined to chase Xueqi to the ends of the world. As long as the Blade Demon caught up to Xueqi, he would have to deal with the attacks from both the Blade Demon and the swords descending from the sky. At that time, his fate would be sealed. I need to find a way to deal with it. I'll be in trouble if it catches up. Xueqi examined the surrounding terrain. The area around him was the very definition of flatlands. The fields were endless, and there was nothing that he could use to his advantage. However, as Xueqi moved further away from Sword Peak Mountain, the number of swords that descended from above increased. It was as if they were reminding Xueqi that he was not allowed to move away from the mountain. However, Xueqi couldn't care less right now. If he stopped, only death awaited him. Hence, he continued running at full speed while enduring the countless swords raining down on him. After running for a certain distance, Xueqi suddenly noticed that, whenever the Blade Demon behind him touched the densely packed swords that had fallen to the ground, damages of -100 would appear above its head. Due to the hindrances in its path, the Blade Demon's speed also slightly decreased. Xueqi's troubled expression transformed into a wicked smile. Just before the effect of Windwalk was about to disappear, Xueqi took out a speed scroll from his bag and used it. He then continued running away from Sword Peak Mountain. This time, however, Xueqi purposefully zigzagged. This way, if the Blade Demon wished to approach him, it would definitely collide with the swords on the ground. As a result, not only would the Blade Demon's speed decrease, but it would also receive a continuous stream of damage. The Blade Demon had a total of 300,000 HP. With its battle recovery, it could regain 3,000 HP every 5 seconds. Xueqi could not kill the blade demon by relying only on the scattered swords. Hence, Xueqi occasionally threw the blazing meteor at the monster. However, the blade demon's defensive capabilities were simply too powerful. Out of all of Xueqi's attacks, only 10% struck the blade demon. Xueqi also used skills such as Thundering Flash and Earth Splitter, dealing over -1000 damage with each hit. Overall, the damage the blade demon received barely surpassed its battle recovery. If Xueqi wanted to kill the blade demon, he would need to spend a very long time to do so. It seems that I can only drag things out. Xueqi had no other options. The only fortunate thing about the situation was that the blade demon could eventually die. Time passed bit by bit. While Xueqi played his game of cat and mouse with the blade demon, White River City had become extraordinarily lively. Zero Wing had finally started its recruitment. The independent players who had waited eagerly for this moment were incomparably excited. As everyone arrived at Zero Wing's recruitment location, anticipation overwhelmed them. The Purple Sun Mansion, the real estate that occupied the largest landmass and best location in White River City, was actually Zero Wing's guild residence. I'm not seeing things right? Isn't this the Purple Sun Mansion? Zero Wing isn't even giving the other guilds a chance. Damn! Zero Wing's guild hall is huge. It won't have any problems holding several thousand players at a single time. That's nothing. I have a brother in Zero Wing. I hear that it's even more amazing inside. Aside from having a high-class bar, many NPCs appear every day to issue guild quests. The number and variety of guild quests they get far surpass those available at the Adventurers Association. Not only can members of Zero Wing obtain a lot more EXP, but the item rewards they can get from the quests are also much more abundant. Some quests even reward secret silver items. Also, if members rest inside the guild hall, they can accumulate a double EXP buff. There are private rooms available for rent, too. For a time, everyone began forming a long queue outside Zero Wing's guild residence, enthusiastically applying to Zero Wing. From a glance, the number of players in line had already exceeded 30,000. The many benefits such as high-level quests, double EXP buff, private rooms and more had sent all the independent players into a frenzy. Meanwhile, when news of Zero Wing's guild residence spread, the various guilds throughout Star Moon Kingdom tumbling into a turmoil. Originally, these guilds didn't think much of a guild residence. However, they never expected a guild residence to provide such significant benefits. All this time, they regarded a guild residence as only a symbol of a guild's establishment, a place where guild members could gather and chat. Now that they realized what a guild residence could do, the upper echelons of these guilds felt a chill crawl down their spines. A guild residence was simply too terrifying. Not only could it increase the leveling speed of guild members, but it could also provide a source of coins for the guild. Now that Zero Wing possessed its own guild residence, the guild would no longer have to purchase coins using credits or form teams to specifically farm coins. The guild residence also had other aspects that could allow a guild to develop quickly. How could guilds like theirs that did not possess a guild residence compete with Zero Wing now? At this time, the first-rate guilds who were not originally concerned with Zero Wing had to re-evaluate their opinions. Young Master Feng, now that Zero Wing has revealed their guild residence, everyone in Star Moon Kingdom has shifted their attention back to them. Overwhelming Smile's achievement can no longer hamper Zero Wing's recruitment. Should we focus on solidifying the branch guild in White River City? I have really underestimated Black Flame. However, don't think that I am out of options, Feng Xianyang sneered. Since you dare challenge me, you will only have one ending. Tell Overwhelming Smile this. Don't worry about spending money. Just steal as many players from Zero Wing as possible. I want to see just how a guild without many members can develop. Shortly after Feng Xianyang gave his command, Overwhelming Smile took action. Overwhelming Smile shocked the various guilds in White River City. Overwhelming Smile has gone insane. Snow Goose shouted when she read the latest information on Overwhelming Smile. In order to attract independent players, Overwhelming Smile had increased the benefits it offered once again. At this moment, it offered 4 times what Dark Star had in the past. Normal members alone would be treated far better than even elite players of other guilds. The benefits offered to Overwhelming Smile's elite members was beyond comparison. Overwhelming Smile even began to publicly poach Zero Wing's normal members, promising them threefold what the other guild members received if they joined the guild. Originally, overwhelming Smile's increase in the benefits was already shocking. Now that they took it a step further and offered another threefold raise, how could the members of Zero Wing not be tempted? In fact, some members already considered withdrawing from Zero Wing and defecting to Overwhelming Smile. Is Overwhelming Smile planning to destroy us with money? Aqua Rose smiled bitterly, her expression turning grim. This move was truly vicious. Zero Wing had only established recently. Its funding had never been abundant. They had no chance against the large funding Overwhelming Smile possessed. While Overwhelming Smile was in the midst of waging a poaching war against Zero Wing, Xueqi had finally reduced the Blade Demon's HP to its last vestiges. Die! Abruptly spinning around, Xueqi dashed towards the low HP Blade Demon. Abyssal Bind. Flame burst. Abyssal Bind immediately tethered the Blade Demon in place, following which, the scorching abyssal blade slashed at the demonic creature's body 12 times in a row. Every slash dealt over -2,000 damage to the Blade Demon, devouring the monster's remaining 20,000 HP. As the Blade Demon died, Xueqi noticed a piece of paper falling beside the monster's body. He originally thought that it was a legacy chapter. However, upon picking it up, Xueqi froze. At that moment, he even thought he might be hallucinating. Broken Steel Forging Design Fragment. Epic Rank Unique Set Equipment. Set consists of a total of 6 pieces. Current fragment count, 1/18. Chapter 385. Professional Level. No way! Xueqi struggled to calm himself even after staring at the forging design in his hand for a long time. Previously, when he obtained the fine gold ranked dragon scale set equipment back in the God's Grave, he had believed it to be the top set equipment currently available, second to none. However, with Xueqi's current forging standards, he could not forge the dragon scale set equipment. He needed to become an advanced forger before he could attempt it. However, a lot of time was required to advance to an advanced forger, time that Xueqi did not have. Yet, now, the forging design for an epic set equipment had fallen into his hands. If he could equip an epic set equipment, killing players would be as easy as slicing vegetables. He would truly be invincible among fellow players. Originally, Xueqi's head had ached thinking about ways to deal with the 5 cities controlled by Underworld. Now, however, this fragment swept those concerns away. As long as he could don the complete broken steel set equipment, he alone could become enough of a nuisance to disturb those guilds. Now that Xueqi knew the Blade Demons dropped the forging design for the broken steel set equipment, even if he had to exhaust himself for a few days, he would obtain all the forging design fragments. Xueqi was suddenly brimming with enthusiasm. Turning around, he charged towards Sword Peak Mountain in search of another Blade Demon. Unknowingly, another day had passed in God's domain. Before Xueqi logged out of the game, he had killed several dozens more skeleton giants and blade demons. In the 2 days he had spent in the Origin Sword domain, Xueqi had obtained a total of 33 legacy chapters and 8 broken steel forging design fragments. He was not far from completing both the legacy book and the broken steel set equipment forging design. Xueqi had lingered in God's domain for 2 natural days without logging out to rest. As his body had been in the virtual gaming cabin all this time, the moment he stepped out of the cabin, his stomach growled a hungry complaint. However, his body did not feel any discomfort after laying motionless for 2 days. On the contrary, he felt extremely relaxed. It's as expected of a virtual gaming cabin. It even assisted my body's absorption of the S-rank nutrient fluids. Xueqi clenched his fists and stretched. Revealing a faint smile, he thought, my punching power should be around 320 kilograms now. Originally, Xueqi had needed 5 days to absorb a bottle of S-rank nutrient fluids, allowing the liquid to restore his body's vitality and repair broken cells. Now, however, only 2 days had passed, and Xueqi had already absorbed the S-rank nutrient fluids. Xueqi judged that, based on his body's current condition, he should barely meet the standard of a professional fighter. His current body had already far surpassed his body in his previous life. At the very least, his physical fitness was no longer inferior to the apex experts of God's domain. Being young really is great. If I started training my body only after I turned 25, it wouldn't really make a difference. Xueqi was satisfied with his current physical fitness. As long as he continued his training, his physical fitness would continue to improve. At that time, he could exert more of his brain's potential, allowing him to break through the boundaries he had never been able to cross. Although Xueqi was hungry, he did not immediately look for something to eat. Instead, after leaving the virtual gaming cabin, he walked towards his fridge and retrieved a bottle of A-rank nutrient fluids. He then filled his empty stomach with the cold liquid. After having not eaten for 48 hours, although he had the protection of the virtual gaming cabin during this period, filling his stomach with solid food would negatively impact his body. It was best to drink nutrient fluids first and let his stomach gradually adapt. After a few hours, he could have a proper meal. Looking at the bottle of A-rank nutrient fluids in his hand, Xueqi felt like he was dreaming. Over 10 days ago, he had lamented spending 10 credits on a meal. Now, however, despite drinking a bottle of nutrient fluids that cost 10,000 credits, he felt nothing at all. Although his reincarnation was part of the reason, it was more due to his change in mentality brought about by strength. Suddenly, his doorbell rang. Accessing the doorway monitor through his quantum watch, Xueqi discovered Blackie standing outside his door. For some reason, Blackie looked panicked. It looked like he had some very urgent news. Xueqi promptly disabled the lock to his front door using his quantum watch. "Brother Feng, where have you been these past 2 days? I haven't been able to contact you all this time. I even wondered if you were in some kind of accident." As Blackie burst into the apartment and saw that Xueqi drinking a bottle of nutrient fluids, he unconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. "What could possibly happen to me?" Xueqi chuckled. "Did something happen while I was gone?" "Of course, something happened. Overwhelming Smile had been poaching our members. Although our guild's member count has increased steadily, the benefits Overwhelming Smile is offering are too enticing, and many have started considering defecting to Overwhelming Smile. I initially thought of increasing the benefits Zero Wing provides as well. However, Sister Aqua said no. Although Sister Fire Dance only focuses on the guild's core team, she agreed with Aqua Rose's opinion. However, at this rate, more members will leave the guild. If we allow this situation to continue, it will negatively impact Zero Wing as a whole. We need to think of a solution for this quickly. I have been trying to contact you all this time, but you haven't answered any of my calls or messages. I had no choice but to visit you personally." Blackie then explained the general situation to Xueqi. "Overwhelming Smile sure is intent on destroying us with money." Xueqi smiled bitterly. "Brother Feng, you too?" Sister Aqua said something similar. Blackie was somewhat astonished. "I understand the situation. However, I am still tied up with my quest. Go back and tell Aqua to continue recruiting members. The benefits we offer will stay the same, but loosen the entry requirements a little." Xueqi also showed his support for Aqua Rose's decision. "Let's see just how many players you can steal from us. How much money do you plan to burn?" Taking Blackie's advice and increasing the benefits that Zero Wing offered was not a long-term solution. Moreover, Overwhelming Smile could simply counter by increasing the benefits it offered again. If this trend continued, the situation would soon snowball out of control and grow into an all-out economic war. At that time, the side with the most funds would be the final victor. Meanwhile, Feng Xianyang, who quietly supported Overwhelming Smile, aimed for just that. If he had to increase the benefits Overwhelming Smile offered dozens of times, he would. He was confident he could destroy Zero Wing this way. Meanwhile, although Zero Wing could cause Overwhelming Smile to suffer greater losses by raising the benefits it offered, they would still lose. Zero Wing did not have the support of a large corporation. It also did not have the funds to contend with Overwhelming Smile. If Zero Wing increased its offer, it would dig its own grave. Xueqi had seen many of such situations in his past life, and he had considered his options long ago. The best thing was to bide their time and stay on course. However invincible the opponents might seem, he would forever remain true to himself. Moreover, when Xueqi had established Zero Wing, he had intended to establish a guild that was pure, rather than one where its members would leave because of a little enticement. Zero Wing did not need such shallow people. At this moment, instead of cursing, Xueqi wanted to thank Overwhelming Smile for ridding the scum from his guild. Xueqi's reply left Blackie speechless. However, since Xueqi had already decided, he would fully support his guild leader. In truth, Xueqi knew that increasing the benefits the guild provided would only increase the burden of Zero Wing. However, he still could not help his panic. Now that he had obtained Xueqi's reply, his anxiety began to fade. Chapter 386. Tier 1 Skill. After receiving Xueqi's confirmation, Xueqi gave his report regarding Zero Wing's recent recruitment. Despite their plans, Overwhelming Smile's appearance did not negatively affect Zero Wing's recruitment. Instead, Overwhelming Smile had made Zero Wing even more popular than before, driving more players to apply to Zero Wing. Some players from other guilds even withdrew from their respective guilds to join Zero Wing. As a result, the entrance of Zero Wing's guild residence was crowded with a sea of players. Those who did not fully understand the situation even thought that Zero Wing had already become White River City's overlord. Though, those who knew the situation silently ridiculed the players rushing to join Zero Wing. After 2 days of chaotic recruitment, Zero Wing had grown from around 5,000 members to having over 10,000. If not for Overwhelming Smile's interruption, Zero Wing would have no problem surpassing the 30,000 member threshold. Unfortunately, many of the players who had been accepted into Zero Wing then defected to Overwhelming Smile almost immediately. By doing so, they could enjoy triple the benefits of the ordinary members of Overwhelming Smile, which was 12 times the treatment normally offered by other guilds. How could anyone resist such a tempting offer? Zero Wing will only suffer if this continues. I need to think of a plan quickly. Xueqi frowned as he listened to Xueqi's report. If the situation continued to evolve like this, Overwhelming Smile would have to waste astronomical sums of money. However, Overwhelming Smile's poaching of Zero Wing's members would also increase its prestige, increasing the guild's strength in White River City. Others might not know that Overwhelming Smile had underworld support from the shadows, but Xueqi knew. In addition to Maple City, Underworld had also taken control of 4 more cities surrounding White River City. If Zero Wing and Overwhelming Smile went to war in the future, Zero Wing would be surrounded by enemies. After Xueqi finished his report, he hurried back to Zero Wing's workshop, whereas Xueqi started working out. Now that Xueqi's body had finished absorbing the S-rank nutrient fluids, it was the perfect time to improve his physical fitness further. However, instead of focusing on strength training like before, Xueqi now focused more on control over his own body. When noon arrived, Xueqi called for a takeout. After finishing his meal, he dove back into the world of God's domain. Xueqi had not come up with any good ideas to counter Overwhelming Smile suppression through wealth. The only thing he could think of right now was increasing his strength. After logging into the game, Xueqi continued his hunting operation. Through his previous 2-day search, Xueqi had grasped the general respawn time for the monsters surrounding the Sword Peak Mountain. As for the location with the highest spawn rate, that would be on the Sword Peak Mountain itself. However, Xueqi had not climbed the mountain throughout this period. He doubted that the legacy trial of one of the 10 Great Saint legacies would be so easy to clear. Although the skeleton giants and blade demons were indeed challenging, a legacy trial that was supposed to be as difficult as a legendary quest should not be so simple. In Xueqi's opinion, the true danger of the Origin Sword domain waited for him on the Sword Peak Mountain. Hence, Xueqi had yet to set foot on the mountain. Instead, he had searched for monsters around the foot of the mountain all this time, silently increasing his strength. In the Origin Sword domain, Xueqi did not obtain any EXP from the monsters he killed. The drops he obtained were also limited to the legacy chapters and broken steel forging design fragments. However, there was one other immediate benefit to killing these monsters. Skill proficiency. The monsters here were all elites above level 25. Xueqi's main targets, the skeleton giants and blade demons, were even level 30 chieftains. These chieftains exceeded Xueqi by 8 levels. Whenever Xueqi used a skill on these 2 monsters, he would receive bonus skill proficiency points, receiving around 5 or 6 with each use. In the outside world, there was a limit to high-level chieftains available for players to kill. Hence, Xueqi was able to raise his skill levels quickly here. In the Origin Sword domain, Xueqi had upgraded the skills that he normally needed a lot of time to upgrade in just 2 days. At this point, all of his attack type skills had risen to level 10 or above, with some reaching level 11. When he upgraded a skill beyond level 12, it would become a Tier 1 skill. Although players had weapons and equipment that could increase their skill levels, that particular increase would not allow a skill to undergo a qualitative change. Only the skill's level would change. For a skill to reach Tier 1, players needed to raise the skill past level 12 personally. Meanwhile, as long as Xueqi could grasp a Tier 1 skill, his combat power would explode. This was why Xueqi diligently killed the monsters outside the Sword Peak Mountain. With this goal in mind, Xueqi continuously searched for monsters and used his skills repeatedly, allowing his skill proficiency to soar. However, as Xueqi killed more monsters, he discovered something odd. The drop rate of legacy chapters and design fragments plummeted. In the beginning, Xueqi could claim a drop in every 4 or 5 kills. Now, he would only get a single drop after killing over a dozen chieftains. The more legacy chapters and design fragments Xueqi obtained, the harder it became to collect them. If Xueqi did not increase his killing speed, it would be impossible for him to gather the required items within 5 days. On the bright side, where players in the outside world normally needed over a week of effort, Xueqi only needed a few hours to upgrade a skill from level 11 to level 12. His efficiency was staggering. After just half a day's worth of effort in God's domain, Xueqi had already promoted Chop to a Tier 1 skill. Chop, action type. Requires Sword. Tier 1, Level 1, Proficiency 0/30,000. Additional 600 base damage. Deals up to 3 consecutive hits in 1 second. If attacks land in the same location, damage increases by 50%. Attack range 6 yards. Cooldown 3 seconds. Compared to the Tier 0, Level 12 Chop, the base damage had not increased much. However, when using the Tier 1, Level 1 Chop, Xueqi could swing his sword 3 times in 1 second. Moreover, if his attack struck the same location, his damage would increase by 50%. Not only did Tier 1 skills increase a player's power, but they also increased a player's freedom of attack. In other words, the more skilled a player was, the more damage they could deal. This was why, despite being the same level, Tier 1 players were far more powerful than Tier 0 players. Tier 1 players also possessed much higher attributes and a larger variety of skills. Tier 0 players had no chance of contending with Tier 1 players of the same level. It's been a while since I've used the Tier 1 Chop. Let's use you as a warm-up. Xueqi dashed towards the skeleton giant side before him and used the Tier 1 Chop. A sharp aura covered the abyssal blade. In the blink of an eye, Xueqi brandished the weapon 3 times, sending 3 sword auras slashing at the skeleton giant. The 3 sword auras combined, forming an even sharper and more powerful sword aura that slashed at the skeleton giant's joint. -1,376, -2,048, -2,062. Aside from these 3 high damages, the skeleton giant, which had remained unperturbed by Xueqi's attacks, had suddenly fallen to the ground. The power of the Tier 1 skill was clear. After the skeleton giant fell, Xueqi had a much easier time attacking it. Following which, Xueqi used one skill after another on the undead creature. If the skeleton giant stood up, Xueqi would use Chop to attack its joints, knocking it to the ground once more. A short moment later, Xueqi had slaughtered the skeleton giant effortlessly. Due to the Tier 1 Chop, Xueqi's battles between the skeleton giants and blade demons had become much easier and took less time than before. Moreover, as Xueqi's efficiency grew, he used his skill more frequently. After spending another 2 days, Xueqi finally upgraded Thunderflame Explosion to Tier 1 as well. Now, Xueqi's attack-type skills that required skill proficiency were all Tier 1 skills. Compared to when Xueqi had just entered the Origin Sword domain, his combat power was far more frightening. It should be about time to climb the Sword Peak Mountain. Chapter 387. Magic Night. Xueqi had already stayed in the Origin Sword domain for 3 days now. After killing a large number of chieftain-ranked skeleton giants and blade demons, the number of legacy chapters and broken steel forging design fragments he could obtain from these 2 monsters had also reached its limit. No matter how many of these monsters Xueqi killed, they no longer dropped any items. If not for the fact that Xueqi wanted to upgrade all his attack-type skills to Tier 1 skills and raise his current combat power to its utmost, he would have long since charged up Sword Peak Mountain. Although he could still continue trying to upgrade the tier of his skills, the amount of skill proficiency required to raise a skill from Tier 1 to Tier 2 was simply too much. This was a feat that could not be accomplished within a short amount of time. In addition, Xueqi did not have much time left. Xueqi had promised to help Gentle Snow in 5 days' time. Hence, he had no choice but to proceed with the legacy trial. Moreover, during this period of time, another major incident had occurred in White River City. After taking the first clear of the large-scale team dungeon in Maple City, Overwhelming Smile had gone on to claim the first clear of the Land of Death, the large-scale team dungeon in White River City. Meanwhile, Ouroboros's team, which was led by Gentle Snow, was a step behind, becoming only the second team to clear the Land of Death. Although Gentle Snow was only a step behind, it was a world of difference. The reason being, only the first team to clear a large-scale team dungeon would have its achievement announced. There was nothing waiting for second place. If Gentle Snow wished to have an announcement of her own, then she would have to clear the Hell Mode Land of Death. However, the Hell Mode of the Land of Death was much more difficult than Hard Mode. She would require a large amount of time to raid the Hell Mode Land of Death, making it not worth her effort at all. It was much better for Gentle Snow to place her focus on raiding level 20 large-scale team dungeons, especially 100-man team dungeons. Compared to going from level 10 to 20, the time span between level 20 and 30 was much wider. Leveling in God's domain took much longer the further one went. After reaching level 20, players would find themselves taking far longer to level up. Hence, guilds would have much more time to challenge dungeons than before. On Sword Peak Mountain, Xueqi had not met with any danger throughout his entire journey. He also did not meet a single monster on the mountain. However, the closer he got to the light at the summit, the faster the swords in the sky descended. Moreover, the number of swords that shot at Xueqi also greatly increased, raising the difficulty of the ascent. Is the difficulty only this much? Xueqi felt very surprised. Although these dropping swords were indeed giving him some trouble, he would have no problems reaching the top of the mountain through dodging and blocking. After spending 4 days in this place, Xueqi had collected a total of 49 legacy chapters and 17 design fragments. He was only one piece away from completing both items. As the only exit of the Origin Sword domain, the peak of the mountain definitely held the final legacy chapter and design fragment. What's that? Xueqi suddenly discovered a majestic-looking armored knight standing at the mountaintop, the knight's hands gripping a great sword. This armored knight was different from the skeleton giants and blade demons. The reason being, this great sword-wielding knight was not a monster but an NPC, instead. Doran Paley, Tier 1 Magic Knight. Level 30. HP 300, 000/300, 000. Level 30 Tier 1 NPCs were much harder to deal with compared to level 30 chieftains. Meanwhile, the Tier 1 NPC in front of Xueqi was clearly not an ordinary existence. Although Doran Paley only possessed 300,000 HP, the same amount as the level 30 chieftain-ranked Blade Demon, the skills and intelligence he possessed would definitely be far stronger and higher than the Blade Demons. To players, Doran Paley was a nightmare. However, Xueqi no longer had a path of retreat right now. He could only advance. After making his preparations to confront the Magic Knight, Xueqi charged forward while dealing with the swords raining down on him. Yet, the moment Xueqi stepped onto the stone platform Doran Paley stood on, the swords in the sky also stopped attacking him, as if declaring that Xueqi had completed the game of cat and mouse. Challenger, since you have managed to arrive at this place, it shows that you indeed possess some strength and are qualified to fight me. As long as you can defeat me, you will be allowed to continue advancing. When Doran Paley noticed Xueqi, instead of entering battle immediately, he revealed an excited expression and explained, "Starting now, you have 5 minutes to prepare. 5 minutes later, I will start attacking. Of course, you are also allowed to initiate an attack ahead of time. I hope that you do not disappoint me." A one-on-one duel? Xueqi looked at his surroundings but failed to discover any other traps or monsters. However, after giving it some thought, Xueqi found nothing strange about this situation. The NPC before him was a Tier 1 class. Doran Paley was definitely not an opponent ordinary players could contend against. Since Xueqi was given 5 minutes to rest, he would certainly not waste it. He promptly sat down on the stage and took out a delicious steak to eat. Not only would he recover stamina and HP this way, he would also receive some bonus attributes. Although running and dodging for long periods of time did not greatly affect a player's body, it was a massive drain on their mental power. Meanwhile, 5 minutes was plenty of time for Xueqi to restore himself to peak condition. However, Xueqi did not just spend his 5-minute rest drinking and eating. He also carefully observed the surrounding environment, as well as studied the NPC named Doran Paley. Xueqi had seen the class known as Magic Knight before in his previous life. It was considered a rare hidden class. An advanced legacy. Magic Knights and Astromancers were classes notorious for being unorthodox. Attacks of Astromancers were known for being strange. Attacks of Magic Knights were known for being violent. Compared to a Tier 1 swordsman, a Tier 1 Magic Knight had more variety in their attacks. The reason being, they incorporated various sorts of magic. In other words, their attacks inflicted a combination of physical and magic damage. Not even Tier 1 shield warriors could endure the attacks of a Magic Knight. However, this hidden class also suffered from a very glaring weakness. In order to increase their attack power, Magic Knights had discarded their life-saving skills. Hence, they were very poor in terms of survivability. The seconds and minutes quickly passed by. Of course, Xueqi would not wait until the 5 minutes were up to attack Doran Paley. In this kind of battle, the first person to strike held the greatest advantage. Hence, Xueqi took the initiative to start the battle. When Xueqi was only 40 yards away from Doran Paley, he suddenly took out the blazing meteor and threw it at the Magic Knight's vital point. Doran Paley simply scoffed at Xueqi's attack. He retrieved the silver greatsword from his back and lightly swung it. Immediately, blades of flame shot out from Doran Paley's greatsword. These blades of flame collided with the blazing meteor, striking it down, before proceeding towards Xueqi. However, when these blades of flame were only about halfway to their target, Xueqi suddenly appeared behind Doran Paley and initiated a Tier 1 chop at the Magic Knight's back. Doran Paley suddenly smiled. He spun around abruptly, the flames covering his greatsword growing even more prominent. With a swing of his greatsword, he sent a flame tornado clashing against Xueqi's abyssal blade. When the two swords collided, sparks splattered the surroundings. After clashing swords for dozens of times in a row, Xueqi concluded that, in terms of strength, he was no match for the Magic Knight. On the other hand, his speed was superior to Doran Paley's. Despite having to retreat before the Magic Knight's every blow, Xueqi managed to avoid receiving any fatal damage. However, under the circumstances, the battle would eventually end in his defeat. After all, Doran Paley possessed 300,000 HP, whereas Xueqi had just slightly more than 3,000 HP. In a situation where both parties were equally skilled, the side with more HP would naturally emerge the victor. To begin with, Xueqi's combat power was inferior to Doran Paley's. As a Tier 0, you indeed deserve praise for being able to fight against me. However, what do you think of this move? Doran Paley revealed a faint smile. Suddenly, the flames surrounding his greatsword disappeared. In the next moment, cold air wrapped around the silver greatsword. With a light swing, the area 40 yards around Doran Paley turned into a land of extreme frost. Inside this domain of frost, both Xueqi's movement speed and attack speed declined greatly. In the blink of an eye, Xueqi lost his speed advantage. Chapter 388. Flame Dragon's Dance. Xueqi hurriedly retreated upon seeing this scene, wanting to escape Doran Paley's frost domain. He had not expected Doran Paley's intelligence to be high enough to actually grasp a player's weakness. This sort of NPC was an extremely rare sight in the current God's domain. Only in the later stages of God's domain would players be able to frequently see such NPCs. Moreover, these NPCs were usually Tier 3 NPCs and above. Meanwhile, Doran Paley was only a Tier 1 NPC. Higher intelligence. I won't stand a chance with the status quo. Xueqi's expression turned solemn when he saw Doran Paley's figure charging at him. If Doran Paley were only an ordinary Tier 1 NPC, even if he had 300,000 HP, Xueqi would have been confident of defeating him. Before leaving White River City, Xueqi had armed himself with over 100 Tier 2 magic scrolls from the guild warehouse. Meanwhile, most of these Tier 2 magic scrolls came from the Bloodhand Association's stronghold, with the rest from the dungeon raids carried out by guild members. The Origin Sword domain was different from the 12 trials Xueqi had previously undergone. In the 12 trials, Xueqi had not been allowed to use any tools to assist him. However, the Origin Sword domain did not impose such a restriction. He could use as many magic scrolls as he liked here. If he had over 100 Tier 2 magic scrolls, it would be an easy task to deal with an ordinary level 30 Tier 1 NPC. Even if Doran Paley had 300,000 HP, he would still die under the might of so many Tier 2 magic scrolls. However, the situation was different now. In the past, Xueqi had crossed swords with many high-tiered NPCs, so he knew very clearly that NPCs who possessed higher intelligence were extremely sensitive towards magic scrolls. Players required some casting time, however short, when using magic scrolls. Meanwhile, when higher intelligence NPCs noticed this, they would either hurriedly withdraw to escape the effective range of the magic scroll, or they would decisively charge up to interrupt the casting process, not giving the player any chance to attack using the magic scroll. Seeing Doran Paley charging at him, Xueqi immediately brandished the Abyssal Blade and cast Abyssal Bind at the Magic Knight. 9 pitch-black chains suddenly emerged from the stone floor. In response, Doran Paley simply snorted and stabbed his great sword into the platform. In the next moment, a golden magic array rose up from underfoot and quickly enveloped his entire body. The magic array released a faint golden glow, and when the pitch-black chains touched this golden glow, they instantly turned into smoke and vanished. Xueqi immediately recognized the golden glow covering Doran Paley's body. This skill was called Free Will. Upon activation, the skill made the user immune to all control effects, rendering a control skill like Abyssal Bind completely useless. Xueqi gritted his teeth and activated Windrider, increasing his movement speed by 150% as well as gaining the ability to fly temporarily. He escaped out of Doran Paley's frost domain right after. However, when the battle began, a magic barrier had formed around the combat platform, enclosing it completely. Hence, although Xueqi could fly now, he could not get too far. When the 20-second duration of Windrider ended, Doran Paley would still catch up to him. At this rate, Xueqi would still die sooner or later. The seconds passed by quickly, and from beginning to end, Doran Paley fervently chased Xueqi. As a magic knight, Doran Paley might possess great destructive power and an absolute advantage in a direct confrontation, but he was sorely lacking in life-saving skills and control skills. Hence, Doran Paley was utterly helpless against Xueqi's extreme speed, and he grew furious at this situation. Within his frost domain, Doran Paley could clearly finish Xueqi off with just a few hits. Yet, as if Xueqi was a lively rabbit, not only was he very agile, his ability to escape was also first-rate. I want to see just how long you can stay in the air. The moment you descend will be the moment I end your life. Doran Paley lightly snorted, glaring at Xueqi who was hovering in the sky. Meanwhile, Xueqi was also silently observing Doran Paley from midair. When in a desperate situation, the most important thing to do was to remain calm. That was one of the basics of surviving in God's domain. No matter how one looked at the situation, a Tier 0 player simply had no chance to defeat a level 30 Tier 1 higher intelligence NPC. Not to mention, said NPC was even a magic knight that possessed 300,000 HP. If it were anyone else standing in Xueqi's place right now, they would have long since lost their lives. Despite his dire situation, Xueqi remained very calm. The reason being, he knew very clearly that legacy trials would not mercilessly toy around with players. Xueqi firmly believed that the trial should have given him a lifeline. However, where was this lifeline? The entire stone platform was currently enveloped by a magic barrier. Moreover, the platform was completely flat, with a range of activity of only 100 by 100 yards available. The entire platform was paved with black stone slabs with strange patterns engraved all over them. Meanwhile, the patterns on these dozens of stone slabs came together to form magic patterns that Xueqi had never seen before. Other than those, there was nothing else on the stone platform. Is my lifeline these magic patterns? Xueqi had a certain amount of understanding in regard to magic patterns. However, He only grew confused when he looked at the magic patterns engraved into the stone slabs. Just what function did these magic patterns have? Soon, Wind Rider's duration ended and Xueqi descended back to the stage. Doran Paley immediately charged at him. Xueqi hurriedly activated Purgatory Power and abruptly jumped. As he raised the abyssal blade up high, raging flames and golden lightning emerged around the blade of the silvery gray weapon. Xueqi then swung the abyssal blade down at Doran Paley's head. Suddenly, as if the space surrounding Doran Paley solidified, the Magic Knight's movements turned sluggish. Not only did the Tier 1 Thunderflame explosion possess a wider effective range, the duration of the fainted effect had also increased to 6 seconds. In addition, upon activation of the skill, enemies within a 10-yard radius would also receive a slowness effect. Enemies affected by this effect would have their speed reduced to only a sixth of their original, only recovering 1/6 of their speed with each passing second. Doran Paley snorted and activated Free Will once more, immediately shaking off the slowness effect. He then sent a flame cross slash to counter Xueqi's Thunderflame explosion. When the two skills collided, countless sparks flew to the surroundings. Cracks also appeared on the stone platform. Meanwhile, the impact sent Xueqi flying backward, his body slamming heavily onto the ground. Xueqi's entire body went numb, and his HP started madly decreasing as well. In the blink of an eye, his HP had fallen below 1,000, and it still showed no signs of slowing down. Panicking, Xueqi hurriedly retrieved an intermediate recovery potion from his bag and emptied its contents. His HP soon stopped decreasing, barely staying above the 800-point threshold before slowly rising. In the end, his HP recovered to over 1,100. Thunderflame Explosion was a skill that possessed frightening destructive power. Yet, despite both being Tier 1 skills, just the impact between Doran Paley's Flame Cross Slash and his Thunderflame Explosion had caused him to lose over half of his HP. If he went through another clash like that, he would definitely die. Currently, Xueqi felt numb all over. Even moving his arm was a challenge. He would not be able to defend against Doran Paley's next volley of attacks for a short period of time. However, something strange happened. Instead of immediately initiating another offensive at Xueqi, Doran Paley actually stood there motionless. What's going on? Xueqi was surprised. At this moment, Doran Paley was glaring at him with eyes filled with killing intent. It did not seem as if the Magic Knight wanted to give him a breather. Yet, Doran Paley just kept looking at him. Wait, his armor. Xueqi discovered cracks on Doran Paley's black armor. However, these cracks were in the midst of slowly mending themselves right now. Is it because my attack has damaged his armor? Xueqi's heart was filled with uncertainty, and he thought of trying it once again. Currently, Xueqi had difficulty moving about. Seeing that Doran Paley gave no indication of taking action, Xueqi took out a Tier 2 magic scroll, Flame Dragon's Dance, from his bag. Chapter 389. Legacy Book. Xueqi needed some time to activate a Tier 2 magic scroll. If he were dealing with an ordinary player or boss, this short time he needed wouldn't be an issue. However, against higher intelligence NPCs and expert players, this small amount of time was enough for the opponent to either dodge the magic scroll or take his life. As Xueqi unrolled the magic scroll, Doran Paley's armor finished repairing itself. At this moment, the Magic Knight gazed at Xueqi with mockery. Lifting his silver greatsword, Doran's legs abruptly pushed against the ground, launching himself at Xueqi with frightening speed. However, Xueqi, who was in the midst of activating the magic scroll that contained the Flame Dragon's Dance, could not afford to move. Otherwise, his efforts would go to waste. Faster! Hurry up! At this moment, Xueqi's heart pounded with anxiety as he watched the slow progression of the Flame Dragon's Dance's activation bar. When Doran was only a few yards from Xueqi, he abruptly jumped into the air. Raising his great sword above his head, he swung it down towards Xueqi. As the weapon of mass destruction descended, deep red flames resembling snakes emerged and coiled around the blade, the moisture in the air evaporating upon the emergence of these flames. At the moment of Xueqi's imminent peril, the activation bar of the Flame Dragon's Dance finally completed. Suddenly, raging flames emerged from the Crimson Magic Scroll, transforming into a serpentine dragon that shot towards the sky. Doran Paley smiled disdainfully at the sight of the flame dragon bearing its fangs at him. Surprisingly, the Magic Knight made no effort to dodge the incoming dragon. Instead, he tightened his grip on his great sword and added more power into his slash. The snake and dragon collided. The flame dragon's dance was a tier 2 spell, and in terms of power, it was far superior to Doran Paley's attack. In the next moment, the flame dragon devoured the fire snake. The dragon then threw Doran, a damage surpassing minus 10,000 points appearing above his head. However, 10,000 damage was merely a scratch to Doran, an NPC with 300,000 HP. After Doran Paley struck the ground, he stood and charged at Xueqi once again without the slightest pause. His current performance had completely changed. Moreover, Doran's armor wasn't even scratched. What is going on? Xueqi frowned at the Magic Knight, confused. The flame dragon's dance was clearly far more powerful than his tier 1 thunder flame explosion. The spell had even inflicted over 10,000 damage. Yet, not only was the NPC's armor intact, but Doran also brimmed with fighting spirit. Considering the situation, Xueqi quickly came to a realization. The cracks in Doran Paley's armor had not been due to damage. Watching the Magic Knight charge at him once again, Xueqi suddenly thought of a possibility. Let's hope this works. Xueqi's body was still slightly numb. Even if Doran did not activate his frost domain, Xueqi could never outrun him. Xueqi had also exhausted his arsenal of escape skills. Xueqi then raised the Abyssal Blade and activated Earth Splitter. When the skill had fully charged, Xueqi swung down his viciously sharp blade. However, Xueqi's target was not Doran Paley this time. It was the black stone slab beneath him. Upon witnessing this attack, Doran's eyes widened with shock, and his expression became extremely ugly. He suddenly increased his speed again. However, no matter how much faster Doran became, he was not fast enough to counter Xueqi's attack on the stone slab. Like a hot knife through butter, the silvery gray abyssal blade sliced apart the black stone slab beneath Xueqi's feet. The slash also split several other stone slabs, creating a deep, long fissure. Following which, a crack also appeared on Doran Paley's armor. Bingo! Xueqi inwardly rejoiced. If he attacked and damaged the black stone slabs under his feet, he could force Doran Paley to halt his assault momentarily. He could then activate Tier 2 magic scrolls without worry. Despicable challenger. Doran Paley was no longer as carefree as before. With bloodshot eyes, he glared at Xueqi and bellowed, "Your corpse will decorate this ground for eternity." Although larger cracks began to appear on Doran Paley's armor, the Magic Knight showed no signs of stopping. Instead, he charged up to Xueqi and swung down his greatsword. Flame Cross Slash. Before Xueqi could grasp the situation, he instinctively used parry to defend himself. Pang! Xueqi retreated 4 steps before he managed to stabilize his body. Although Xueqi had been forced back and had to use his life-saving skill, parry, he revealed a joyous smile on his face. Originally, even if he negated the damage from Doran's attack, the impact would have sent him flying back over a dozen yards. Now, although his hands were slightly numb, he had only been forced to take 4 steps backward. This showed that Doran Paley's strength had greatly weakened. Indeed, just as Xueqi had guessed, damaging the black stone slabs would weaken his adversary. Previously, Doran had not immediately dashed forward and attacked Xueqi because he was worried that Xueqi would discover the secret. Hence, he decided to hold back and allow his armor to repair itself. However, the display of his armor's recovery had been another facade. In reality, Doran had tried to hide the black stone slab's recovery. Previously, Doran's position had just so happened to block Xueqi's vision, preventing Xueqi from seeing the damaged stone slabs behind him. As to why Doran had launched himself up to attack Xueqi the second time, it was to prevent the flame dragon's dance from damaging the black stone slabs once more. Unfortunately, Doran's attempt at repeatedly disguising this fact could not escape Xueqi's beast-like insight. Naturally, after Doran Paley realized that his secret had been exposed, he no longer attempted to hide it. Instead, he began a vicious assault on Xueqi, hoping to annihilate his opponent sooner. However, a known secret was no longer a secret. Now that Xueqi knew Doran Paley's weakness, he activated Defensive Blade and used Thundering Flash on the stone beneath them. Streaks of blue lightning shot out from the abyssal blade. In the next moment, the lightning transformed into hungry wolves that dove into the black stone slabs, charring them. Die! Doran Paley's rage flared as he swung his great sword at Xueqi desperately. However, Defensive Blade deflected every slash. Most importantly, with each consecutive slash, Doran's attacks grew weaker. When Defensive Blade was almost exhausted, Xueqi switched out the Aura of Wind on the 7 Luminaries ring for the Aura of Water. Aura of Water. Received healing increased by 60%. Cast consumption reduced by 30%. Activatable skill dash. Life Bloom. Heal selected target for 20% HP every second for 40 seconds. Cooldown. 1 minute 30 seconds. Currently, Xueqi had less than 1,100 HP. Even if Doran Paley had grown weaker, Xueqi would still not survive more than a few hits from the Magic Knight. Hence, he cast Life Bloom on himself. In the blink of an eye, Xueqi recovered more than 1,000 HP. For the next 40 seconds, he would also receive over 1,000 HP every second. Following which, Xueqi began to confront Doran head-on. While defending against Doran Paley's attacks, Xueqi also made sure to attack the black stone under his feet. Xueqi could not help but admit that Doran Paley was indeed very powerful. Despite losing so much of his strength, the NPC could still inflict over -1,500 with Flame Cross Slash. Fortunately, Flame Cross Slash had a long cooldown. By the time Doran could use the skill again, Xueqi's HP would have long since fully recovered. During Life Bloom's 40-second duration, Xueqi had destroyed over half of the stone slabs of the platform. Meanwhile, not only had Doran Paley's strength sharply decreased, but his speed had also fallen by quite a bit. Xueqi now had a much easier time facing the NPC. Occasionally, Xueqi also used Phantom Kill, allowing his doppelganger to pin down Doran while he used a Tier 2 magic scroll from the side to destroy the black stone slabs. Unfortunately, although this infuriated Doran Paley, he could do nothing to stop Xueqi. As soon as Xueqi had shattered all of the stone slabs on the combat platform and was about to focus his attacks on Doran Paley. Suddenly, Doran Paley's armor shattered, the metal shards scattering across the ground. Doran Paley then gripped his head with both his hands and let out an agonized scream that echoed throughout the Sword Peak Mountain. In the next moment, Doran Paley's full HP bar emptied, his body transforming into particles of light and vanishing. 4 items dropped to the ground in place of Doran's body. There was a pitch-black key with a faint blue glow, a silver stone tablet, and the final legacy chapter and broken steel forging design fragment. Before Xueqi could pick up the drops, all of the legacy chapters he possessed flew from his bag and combined with the legacy chapter Doran had dropped, forming a thick and heavy ancient book. Golden divine runes decorated its cover. If translated to the language of players, these divine runes would read as Legacy Book. Chapter 390, Secret Sword Technique. Xueqi sighed in relief when he saw the dazzling golden book of legacies. With this, the trial should be over, right? Xueqi picked up the drops before walking towards the hovering golden book before him. He then clicked on the Book of Legacies, checking its information. System. Completion rate 70%. Do you wish to open the Book of Legacies and accept the legacy within? What? Only 70%? Xueqi was surprised. Taking another look, he was sure his eyes were not playing tricks on him. After defeating a Tier 1 Magic Knight like Doran Paley, which was no easy feat, he had only completed 70% of the trial. Legacies in God's domain were categorized into different ranks. Similarly, there were differences within each rank, and these differences were based on the completion rate of the legacy trial. Completion rates between 51%, 60% would be given a C rank evaluation. At C rank, players would obtain the basic skills of the legacy. Completion rates between 61%, 70% would be given a B rank evaluation. At B rank, players would obtain the basic skills of the legacy in addition to 1-3 legacy skill points. Completion rates between 71%, 80% would be given an A rank evaluation. At A rank, players would obtain the basic skills of the legacy in addition to 5-9 legacy skill points. Completion rates between 81%, 90% would be given an S-rank evaluation. At S-rank, players would obtain the basic skills of the legacy in addition to 10-18 legacy skill points. Completion rates between 91%, 100% would be given an SS rank evaluation. At SS rank, players would obtain the basic skills of the legacy in addition to 20-36 legacy skill points. Legacy skill points would unlock the class skills in the legacy book. Moreover, the more powerful a class skill was, the more legacy skill points would be required to unlock it. The number of powerful skills a player possessed was important in determining their combat power. It was especially true for powerful class skills. Hence, legacy skill points were extremely important. However, it was not easy to obtain legacy skill points. After obtaining the legacy book, aside from receiving one legacy skill point every 3 levels, players could only obtain more points by completing special quests and challenges. In general, legacy skill points were an extremely rare commodity. Right now, Xueqi's completion rate would only give him a B rank evaluation, and he would, at most, receive 3 legacy skill points. This was unacceptable. He had only obtained one of the 10 Great Saint legacies after much difficulty, so why would he be satisfied with just 3 legacy skill points? Moreover, he only needed 1% more to boost his evaluation up to A rank and receive a minimum of 5 legacy skill points. He would need to level up 6 times to bridge this small gap. Is it because I killed Doran Paley by exploiting his weakness? Xueqi silently pondered his situation as he rejected the offer to open the legacy book. Based on Xueqi's recollection, one needed to complete certain tasks in order to increase the legacy trial's completion rate. However, since arriving at the Origin Sword domain 4 days ago, Xueqi had constantly observed and searched for anything special in the realm. He had done so precisely because he wanted to avoid missing anything, resulting in a low completion rate. Yet, after 4 days of careful observation, Xueqi had not discovered anything special. He had the same results after he explored the entire mountain. Just what did I miss? Xueqi thought that he had performed perfectly in this legacy trial, and he should not have missed anything suspicious. He had even completed the broken steel forging design. As for the skeleton warriors, skeleton giants, and blade demons below the mountain, they would respawn indefinitely. It was not possible to eradicate them. Does it have something to do with these items? Xueqi stored the legacy book before retrieving the pitch-black, sword-shaped key and the silver tablet. Doran's key. This is a strange key. It exudes a faint trace of ancient magic. Secret sword technique. The pattern engraved on this tablet is too vague and incomplete, and no information can be obtained from this pattern. However, some kind of divine power hides within this pattern. If one gathers all of the stone tablets, this vague and incomplete pattern can be restored. Current tablet count, 1/6. This was the first time Xueqi had seen or heard of an item like this secret sword technique. However, judging from its description, it should not be related to the legacy trial. After all, 6 tablets were required to restore it, and no matter how he thought about it, there should not be any more enemies as strong as Doran Paley. Hence, Doran's key was the only possibility. As the final boss of Sword Peak Mountain, his key would have something to do with the Sword Peak Mountain itself. Since there's a key, there must be a lock here somewhere. Xueqi put away the key and tablet and began to explore every inch of the mountain carefully. While Xueqi was in the Origin Sword domain, Star Moon Kingdom had undergone many changes. The large-scale dungeons of the various cities in Star Moon Kingdom had been conquered, one after another, generating one system announcement after another. Moreover, due to Zero Wing's incitement, the various guilds throughout Star Moon Kingdom had also rushed to earn reputation, hoping to obtain their own guild residence. When Zero Wing had publicized its guild residence, Overwhelming Smile spent an astronomical sum of money to poach Zero Wing's members. However, despite this being a significant blow, Zero Wing had not stopped developing. On the contrary, they grew stronger with each passing day. Now, Zero Wing's member count approached 20,000. Moreover, Zero Wing's members sported high levels. Currently, most average players in White River City were only level 18 or 19, while elite players of guilds were around level 21. Meanwhile, Zero Wing's ordinary members were level 20, while its elite members were all level 22 or above. Although there was only a difference of 1 level between the elite members of Zero Wing and the other guilds, The necessary EXP to surmount this gap was intimidating. The majority of the NPC commissioned guild quests found inside the guild residence were high-level quests. Not only did these quests reward a ton of EXP, but the item rewards were also impressive. Most importantly, the monetary rewards of these guild quests were much higher than the guild quests available at the Adventurers Association. As a result, the income of Zero Wings members was at least twice as much as players of other guilds. This was also why Overwhelming Smile's high-priced poaching could not defeat Zero Wing. Snow, are you really planning to do this? The Flame Witch, Zhao Yueru, asked worriedly. This isn't what I want, either. However, I have to take this risk. Otherwise, you too know how things will end, Gentle Snow said, frowning as she quietly read the report she had just received. But Zhao Yueru wanted to persuade her friend but soon shut her mouth, holding back her protests. She knew that, no matter what happened, there would be a battle in the end. Only, this final battle had arrived too early, catching them unprepared. Snow, you've read the latest report. With our strength, we are no match for them. Rest assured, I would not take such a risk if I were not certain. Gentle Snow smiled faintly as she recalled Yi Feng's figure. Zhao Yueru was surprised by Gentle Snow's expression. Facing such a desperate situation, she never thought Gentle Snow could still smile with such confidence. Meanwhile, back on Sword Peak Mountain, after spending most of the day searching, Shifeng finally discovered a pool on the mountainside. This place is somewhat suspicious. Slowly, Shifeng walked towards the pool of water. Dipping his hand into the pool, Shifeng immediately realized that ice had formed over his hand, freezing it solid. The water inside this pool was icy. If he dove into this water, he would freeze to death. Chapter 391 Underwater Mysteries. This pool of water seems interesting. Not only is the water so cold, but it is also light as air, weightless. Moreover, even with 60 points in ice resistance, it still freezes my hand, Shifeng muttered, shocked as he examined his frozen hand. Just what is this water? With 60 points in ice resistance, players could withstand most cold environments in God's domain. However, Shifeng's resistance was useless against this water. It was astounding. Following which, Shifeng took Doran's key from his bag, hoping the key would trigger some sort of reaction. However, despite making a full circle around the pool while holding the key, nothing happened. He did not discover any kind of lock, either. Is it inside the pool? Shifeng was fairly confident that was the case. According to the statistics collected on God's domain in the past, most chance encounters and treasures were normally found in treacherous lands. Only a few treasures and encounters occupied safe areas, and these normally required players to possess sufficient status or luck. As for the so-called treacherous lands, players also knew them as forbidden lands. Unless players had ways of dealing with the threats, their deaths were all but guaranteed upon entering these forbidden lands. Meanwhile, the small pool before Shifeng was clearly one such forbidden land. If he entered the pool without a plan, he would freeze to death. If not for his 60 points of ice resistance, he would have received a large amount of frost damage the moment he came into contact with the water. He might have even frozen to death instantaneously. Furthermore, even though it was only his hand that had frozen, it still took over a dozen seconds before it thawed completely. If Shifeng jumped into the water, although he might not receive any damage due to his ice resistance, the water would still freeze his body. With how light the water was, he would surely sink to the bottom of the pool once the ice encased him. In the end, he would still drown. What should I do now? Shifeng gazed at the cold water and meditated quietly. It would be great if I could increase my magic resistance. It had never been easy for players to raise their magic resistance. It was also impossible for players to come into possession of equipment that could raise magic resistance at this stage of the game. Even if they had such equipment, the effects would be minimal. Shifeng only managed to accumulate 60 points in ice resistance due to the Ice Blue Devil Flame and the Golden Stigmata. For ordinary players, they'd be lucky if they had 10 points of ice resistance at this stage of the game. Of course, the quickest way to raise one's magic resistance was to consume a magic resistance potion. Even a basic magic resistance potion could raise one's magic resistance significantly. If Shifeng could consume an intermediate magic resistance potion, adding that to his own magic resistance, he might be able to cope with the frosty water. However, Xueqi did not have any magic resistance potions on him at the moment. The recipe for basic magic resistance potions only dropped in level 20 maps and above. Meanwhile, the recipe for intermediate magic resistance potions only dropped in level 40 maps and above. Obviously, Xueqi could not obtain any of these recipes right now, not to mention the recipe for the specialized ice resistance potion. However, if he could not enter the pool, how was he supposed to obtain the remaining 30% completion rate? If he entered the pool, he would become an ice sculpture. Unless he could get his hands on an ice resistance potion, he had no way to combat the powerful cold within the pool. This freezing effect is truly troublesome. I wonder if Fantasy World's magic damage immunity will work? Xueqi touched the water and allowed his hand to freeze once again. He then tried the activatable skill of the Aura of Illusion, Fantasy World. However, even after activating Fantasy World, the freezing effect had not dispelled. If Aura of Illusion won't do, what about Aura of Space? Unwilling to give up, Xueqi waited for another minute before switching to the Aura of Space and submerging his hand into the pool water once again. This time, a miracle actually happened. Although Xueqi could still feel an unbearable, biting cold, his hand did not turn into a solid block of ice. As expected, heaven will always leave a door open. As long as he dealt with the pool's effect, which bound his movements, he would have an easier time dealing with the water. So what if he had to endure a little cold? Xueqi was confident that he could tolerate it. Following which, Xueqi activated Phantom Kill and had his doppelganger remain by the poolside as insurance. Within 40 seconds, if his life were threatened, he could immediately swap positions with his doppelganger. Xueqi then dove into the pool, creating a loud splash. As the water was extremely light, Xueqi managed to sink quickly with little effort. Moreover, the deeper he sunk, the darker it became. Soon, darkness devoured Xueqi's surroundings. It was as if he had fallen into a bottomless pit. Currently, Xueqi felt as if he had suddenly been thrown into the Arctic North, naked. The slightest movement stung painfully inside this chilling water. If any normal person were in his place, they would have definitely screamed in pain. However, from beginning to end, Xueqi only gritted his teeth and remained silent. As Xueqi sunk deeper into the pool, the stinging sensation became more intense. At this moment, even someone with a strong will, such as Xueqi, could no longer cope with the pain. His complexion had paled, and his eyes were bloodshot. The pain was so unbearable that he could not even scream if he wanted to. Why haven't I reached the bottom yet? Xueqi's anxiety grew as he looked at the time. 10 seconds had passed since he jumped into the water. Although he had not received any actual damage thus far, the pain took a huge toll on his mental strength. He had greatly underestimated this water. He did not think that the water below would become so cold. Xueqi was already approaching his limit after spending 10 seconds in this pool. He was also surrounded by darkness, so he could not see anything below or around him. Struggling, Xueqi activated Ice Blue Devil Flame. Even while underwater, the Ice Blue Devil Flame burned brilliantly as it wrapped around Xueqi's body, causing the temperature of the surrounding water to rise rapidly. The light from the flames also illuminated Xueqi's surroundings. Xueqi breathed a sigh of relief at the effects of the Ice Blue Devil Flame. The rise in temperature allowed him to recover from the cold and pain, and the chill was just barely tolerable. As Xueqi observed his surroundings, he suddenly discovered that the pool of water was much larger than he had imagined. Previously, he could not see anything due to the darkness. Now that he had the Ice Blue Devil Flame, he could see everything clearly. How was this a pool? There was actually a courtyard beneath him. Hence, Xueqi started swimming downward, hastening his descent. The courtyard at the bottom of the pool looked ancient. Its architectural style was completely different from the buildings he had seen in the current god's domain. It looked like the Elysium spoken of in legends. It was fascinating. Although this place was very beautiful, Xueqi could sense great danger. Moreover, whether it was in this life or his previous life, this was the strongest sense of danger he had ever felt. System. You have discovered the Eternal Courtyard. That should be the place. Xueqi swam towards the spiral building with a shut gate that he had seen from the courtyard. Even the stargazing tower paled in comparison to this beautiful and mystical place. If not for the danger Xueqi felt, he would have stopped and admired the scenery. The tightly shut gate was made of gold, and many drawings had been engraved on it. These drawings seemed related to the destruction of the ancient gods. Xueqi had even discovered the image of an ancient god that he knew of, the Twilight Goddess. Some sort of power protected the Golden Gate, and it was impossible to destroy it with external forces. Currently, Xueqi was not of the mind to study the images as he had discovered a keyhole on the gate. Meanwhile, this keyhole was centered in an image of the sun. Xueqi then took out Doran's key and inserted it into the keyhole, twisting it gently. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.